Please give it up for Axios Chief Technology Correspondent, Ina Fried.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited to see you all here. For the second year in a row, we're coming to you live from Tech Week New York with our Axios AI Summit. Whether you're joining us in the room or via live stream, we're really glad you're here, and we're going to have some really important conversations today. Don't forget, if you want to join in the conversation, just use the hashtag Axios AI Summit. I just posted a photo of Jeffrey Katzenberg and I using that hashtag. We're gathering at just a critical moment for AI. It's not just a buzzword anymore. The technology is real, and the conversations we need to have around how we use that technology are critical. Raising tough policy questions, challenging us to think differently about what's being built, who's benefiting, who's being left out, and the risks. And there are risks. The technology is super exciting. Every day, I look at something and I'm like, I can't believe AI can do that. And oftentimes later in the day, I'm like, ooh, I can't believe AI can do that. That's the conversation that I'm hoping we're going to have. And obviously, there's no better place to have it than here in New York City, a global hub of media, finance, art, tech, culture, where all these forces collide. The city's creative energy, its finance, it's everything about it. So we're going to have a great mix. We're going to have some great fireside chats. We're also going to have some live tech demos. And tech demos are always great, like the Gee Whiz, but I think it's especially important with AI, where the technology changes. Really, one thing I hope you all take away is if you look at the technology and you try it out and it can't do something you want it to, try it 6 months later. This is moving so fast, and you'll see some of that today. While I have you, be sure to mark your calendars for what's ahead. We have a slide. So September 17th, we'll be in the nation's capital talking about the intersection of this technology and policy, as well as other topics. And then December 4th, we'll be in my home turf, San Francisco, talking to the people and companies at the frontier of what's being developed. A couple other quick things. Your badges have a QR code on them that'll help you connect to the Wi-Fi, an event map, the run of the show, etc. Most of all, again, thank you for being here, and let's get started. To kick things off, we're going to be joined by two leaders who understand the power of this technology and the power of storytelling. Jeffrey Katzenberg is a force in entertainment who I think needs no introduction. He's also been investing in a lot of tech companies, including a couple that you're here from today, through his WonderCo investments. Hari Ravichandran is the founder and CEO of Aura, not the ring company, different Aura. This is a company using AI to help families stay safe online, including using machine learning to better moderate children's content online. Together, they represent a powerful intersection that we're going to focus on a lot of how do you merge AI and trust and responsible innovation. First, let's watch a short video about their technology, narrated by none other than Morgan Freeman, showing how Aura's product works and how it's helping shape the dialogue around moderating online content and safety.
Aura has just launched a first-of-its-kind AI-powered tool that works like an early warning system to help parents keep their kids safe from technology and the disruptions it may cause to their mental well-being. By analyzing what and when the child is watching, liking, and engaging with online, Aura identifies trends and patterns that are unique to that child, building a personalized understanding or baseline of their digital well-being. By establishing this baseline and tracking changes over time, Aura recognizes meaningful shifts in their behavior, alerting parents and providing them with science-backed recommendations for what to do next. Finally, a product that gives parents more than blanket screen time guidances and overly simplified content filtering tools. The solutions to our youth well-being crisis won't come from Congress or big tech companies alone. It starts with families, empowered with the right tools to protect their kids. Aura is leading the charge, offering smart, simple, AI-powered solutions for digital parenting.
So please help me welcome Hari and Jeffrey. Definitely, thanks so much. Hey, thanks. So, I want to get into the technology, but first I thought I'd throw a couple of stats that I don't think are going to come as a huge surprise. Basically, lots of kids have smartphones, they're spending a ton of time on it, and their parents are worried. How many people in the room does that resonate with? Yeah, me too. I have a 12-year-old, and it's obviously a hugely important discussion. Probably burying our heads in the sand isn't going to work. Totally regulating it isn't going to work, nor is giving them free rein. Before we get into, though, how Aura's technology works, I think you both have fairly personal stories about why this issue matters.
Well, I think maybe just to frame the conversation, we should actually start with some statistics that are pretty new and they're pretty raw, which I really love Hari. I gave my phone away here, so I actually don't have them in front of me. Made that mistake. But I think Hari knows them mostly. So we'll get into and discuss, but Hari launched a new product, this digital parenting product, about 6 weeks or so ago. But from January 1 till April 1, we had 2,500 beta users of this. So these were kids between 13 and 17 years old. And maybe you can just rattle off the stats of the data out of that 2,500 user set.
Yeah, so we're tracking behavior and behavioral changes so we can actually see what's happening with kids over that window of time. I wish it was all positive. I think we're seeing a lot more negative than one would like, and I think it's a part of the sentiment that we're seeing a lot of data from even government bodies that are starting to come out. But in general, I think kids are on these devices about 8 hours a day, which again, if you think about a window of time, it's a significant portion of it. When you look at sort of emotional issues, about half of kids in high school age say that they are depressed, and we can see that in the data, meaning they have long windows of time where they're on devices doom scrolling, or they have sleep irregularities as well.
So 22% of them are up at night past bedtime on these devices.
About 20% end up engaging, and unfortunately, a lot of it's different actually by boys or girls. We're seeing very different patterns. With girls, especially, we're seeing about 22% sort of engage in what we call negative coping strategies. It could be cutting, it could be restricting calories, suicidal ideation, and situations where they actually have a method and a plan are quite high. About 22% we're seeing with negative coping strategies, about 10% with active sort of suicidal ideation or thoughts.
And that's actually sort of what got you into this. I mean, for those that don't know Aura, the original business largely focused on, identity theft and that sort of thing. Talk a little bit about what brought you into this family safety.
When I started this company, the view was pretty simple, which is technology is great. It can do lots of amazing things. And especially on the enterprise side, there's a lot of guardrails. Like companies set up guardrails for how to use technology. But for consumers and families, we don't know. Like we think that everything's safe. Our data's out there. It's very hard to figure out how to secure yourself. So our view was, let's take a lot of these things that are very complicated and make it super simple for consumers and families. So that's how we started. And then I'd say we kind of progressed where it initially started just with devices to then doing more and more things for families. So, families who come to us and say, hey, we're really worried about our kids being on these devices for so much time. Can you do content filtering? Can you start doing time limits, et cetera, on these devices? So we started adding those things in. And then about 2.5 years ago, I have 4 kids, and I have 2 device-age kids, and one of them went through a super rough time. And again, we're a pretty tight-knit family. And so with her, she was, I'd say it was sort of February of that year, she started saying, hey, I don't feel great. And we said, okay, well, maybe you're just overwhelmed. There's too much stuff going on with school. Let's wait till the summer. Summer rolls around, it was June at that point. And we thought, okay, well, she's going to be excited because, no school and you got a few months off. But it went the opposite way. She was like in bed, didn't want to get up. She was clearly just, quite depressed. And all of it was actually, frankly, super confusing for us because we didn't know that there was a lot of this underlying stuff. And it progressed where it got worse and worse and worse. So by about August, it was very clear she needed help. Like we had to go get her some help, and she was engaging in things that were kind of scary for me as a dad. And So we took her in, we dropped her off at this thing called CBAT. We're in Boston. It's called community-based therapy. It's not actual hospitalization, but sort of a level below that. And we as a family had never ever looked at her phone before. We were very like hyper privacy oriented. Kids should have agency. They should sort of, make their own mistakes and try to figure stuff out. But this facility didn't allow for her to bring her phone in. So we brought the phone back, we get back home. That's the first time I actually pick up the phone and look at it, and it is absolutely shocking. Like I would never have guessed in a million years all the things that were going through her head and like the things that she was doing and she was engaging with. And
that's the point, which is that today you can have a teenager sitting across the table from you, and you don't actually know who they're with, what they're doing, or really where they're at. They may be across the table, but that's not where they are at. When we all grew up, our parents had answers to those things. You could be a parent, and parenting doesn't mean suffocating. It means guiding.
But you knew who your kids were hanging out with. You knew what they were doing.
You knew what they were doing. And today, literally, you know this with your 13-year-old, you actually are flying blind. And here's an amazing thing. In a couple of years, your kid's going to become driving age. Well, you don't just hand them the keys to the car. They get a learner's permit. You go to a Walmart parking lot that's very big and nothing around, and you onboard them. And over a series of a period of time and years, they earn the skill and the capabilities and the guidelines to actually be able to get in a car and drive. Well, I have news for you. The damage that we are doing to our kids in terms of the online, unsupervised, unparented, is destroying a generation. It's that bad.
What I find interesting, though, is you could have gone through that experience, Hari, and one response, which would be very natural, is I want to build something so I know exactly what they're doing. I want to monitor every step. And there's sort of a natural feeling as a parent that, maybe if I know everything, I'm better. But that's not the approach you took.
Yeah,
the approach you took was, how do we balance? Because eventually the kid's going to be making their own decisions.
Yep.
How do we give parents insights without giving them all the raw data? Talk about how you ended up.
Look, I think the original view was, again, at least for me and most people I speak with, is the same thing, which is you think about a lot of things for your kids, like privacy, all of these things, agency, all of these things. But worrying about their safety is hugely clarifying, because none of the other stuff matters. Like, if you are in conflict with safety for your kid, there's one thing, and that's make sure your kid's safe, right? And so that's very clarifying. So that's sort of the extreme end of it, which is you're sort of in it at that point in time. So you got to figure out how to kind of navigate your way out of it, which is how we started, because we were looking around saying, well, what can I put on our phone that will give me some of these insights? We couldn't find anything, so we said, let's just go build it. But part of the thinking there was, you start talking to parents that are not in it, and they say, hey, I kind of want to make sure my kid's okay, but I don't want to have them have it be sort of this big helicopter-y thing. And so
you can't spy on them, because if you start spying on them, they will find a way to shut you out.
And that's what I find so interesting about the approach.
The brilliance of what Hari and his product team did is, and this is where AI has done something remarkable, which is they have created something that is observational, and it actually reads sentiment. And because it's building this extraordinary knowledge base, it actually becomes predictive. And so when you take those three things together, you don't need to read their text. You don't actually need to see what they're doing in a way that becomes uncomfortable for them. It's a partnership that you have with your kid. And by the way, what you want for a 12-year-old is quite different from the controls that you want for a 16 or 17, which is just my point about driving. You start them with a lot of controls.
Yeah.
And as they show they're ready for it and they know how to do it, you got to let them loose here. But right now, we are just throwing them out in the middle of the ocean with nothing.
So Hari, because the audience hasn't had the opportunity to see it, instead of saying your kid sent 6 texts to this person and here's what they said, it says, wow, your kid normally only sends 1 or 2 texts a day. They've sent 50. Or your kid normally sends 20 texts a day. They haven't sent any. It's those kind of conversation starters, right?
I mean, it's very much geared for that. And I think, the big thing we did at the very beginning was to say, look, this is not a tech problem, it's a human problem. So if you look at how humans have been solving this for the last 50 to 100 years, there's psychiatrists, psychologists, clinicians, people that have been thinking about this, engaging with kids in real life. And so we said, look, whatever we build has to be evidence-based. So we went partnered up with Boston Children's Hospital. We brought in a chief medical officer. We built up a team of about a dozen clinicians, et cetera. And we use them to take a lot of the insights they have from the field to help train the models. And it's very important. Like, I'll give you a simple example, right? This came up actually like a couple of weeks ago. The models found that there was a child that was drinking, underage. They were drinking. It was clear from the patterns that this is what's going on. Engineers and product people say, oh, we should just like send this off to the parents right away, which again is not a bad answer, by the way. We said, okay, well, let's go talk to the clinicians, see what they say. And they say, well, if this happened in our office, if a kid told us that, they had a drink last night, the questions going through our mind are, how old are they? Have they done this before? Can they drive? So there's this like kind of nuanced way of thinking about the problem, and then they decide, okay, should we call the parents or not? So our standard is if a clinician would call the parent if they were in active, counseling a child, that's really when you want to send an alert, because you don't want to be sort of the boy that cried wolf and start freaking out parents, which is like the last thing we want to do, basically.
But here's the thing. So 80% of girls 18 years old and under do not like their body shape. And now more than half of them are doing things that are unhealthy as a result of it. What the AI has been able to do is to sort of capture now the macro data of this and to be able to read into it. So now this is just now a simple cause and effect. Somebody downloads, a girl in that teenage demographic, downloads a calorie tracking app. Actually, you need to pay attention to it. It may be okay, but honestly, right now, we can tell you just on the amount of information that we've been able to see here, it's usually the beginning of a problem. Now, as a parent, if you know that, you can say, hey,
let's talk
what are you doing? Why? Let's just talk about it here. And, maybe it's all fine and okay, but if you don't know, how are you going to deal with it?
I mean, and look, thematically, it really is a partnership with the parents, because if you just think about the problem, right, which is through COVID, negative sort of, emotional views for kids were kind of getting worse. And something happened in that 2 years. If you talk to any clinician, any hospital, they'll tell you, like, something weird happened. And after COVID ended, the caseload went up like 100x. It was like insane. And the number of people that could treat these kids, there's 6,000 of them, and they're trained. It takes them a long time to get trained. But the caseload's now significantly higher. And so how do you solve it, right? So the clear view is you got to recruit the parents. I mean, they're the front line of defense. They're hugely vested in this. And the problem for parents like myself is I don't know what's going on. Like, what is happening on the device,
So as a parent, I really want to keep this part of the conversation going. But while we have Jeffrey here, I did want to also set up another...
I was trying to run the clock, just to be clear.
You didn't quite run it all out. So
there we go.
We're going to have a really deep, rich discussion today on how this AI technology is changing the interaction with Hollywood, with content creators. And I really wanted to get your thoughts. We're going to be talking to the founder of Runway. We're going to be talking to Joseph Gordon-Levitt. We're going to see some cool video technology. But how are you thinking about how does this amazing technology, which does unlock a lot of creativity from people who might not have had the skills before, but it also threatens jobs. And we've been through this as an industry before. Hollywood had to navigate the Napster era. What are you thinking about as we sort of enter this time of really unprecedented opportunity, but potentially a lot of job destruction?
So I've been to this rodeo before. I've been through this personally. I arrived at a company, the Walt Disney Company, deep, rich history of extraordinary...
And if I recall, it was really smooth the whole time, right?
Never a bump in it. But traditional hand-drawn animation, was the foundation of the company. It was the heart and soul of the company. And, Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast or Lion King, these movies are, 125 to 135,000 hand-drawn cells, then inked and painted by hand. It's an extraordinary time, a great renaissance of storytelling and creativity. And then this amazing new technology pioneered by John Lasseter comes along, and it is breathtaking to some and very, very, very scary to others. And I can tell you, if you go back to that time, the resistance to wanting to do that, to make Toy Story, to make that 3-picture deal at Disney was huge. And the people most scared of it are the ones that were going to be disrupted by it. And the fact is that everybody was scared as to all the jobs are going to be lost. The computer's taking over. I mean, everything that you are hearing today are the issues that we had to deal with. And the result of it was you jump forward, and yes, there was disruption, but animation's never, ever been bigger than it is today. And there have never been more jobs in it. There are different jobs. And I think Jensen Young has said that AI isn't going to replace people. It's going to replace people that don't use AI. And so just in the exact same analogy there is that the talent that went and learned how to use the computer as a new pencil and a new paintbrush in it, they thrived and prospered, and there was an extraordinary growth in the whole industry. Now, is it going to be exactly the same here? No, there never is. But I would say that if change is uncomfortable, irrelevance is going to be a whole lot harder.
So we're actually over time, but I want to ask one more question along these lines. So one of the things that I always saw coming was that AI was going to let you spend time in the universes you love. For me, that's like Legos and Sesame Street and Simpsons. But I thought it would be a joint project of the tech companies and the people that created that. Already with ChatGPT's new image generator, I can transform myself into that Sesame Street Muppet, into that Simpsons character. As one of the ones who helped develop some of these characters, does it bother you that I can enter the Shrek universe with only ChatGPT involved and not the studios?
Well, the problem is that there are lines here in this, and unfortunately, it's not a simple answer. It's a simple question for which there's a lot of complexity to it. Because
that's what I like to do. Ask a simple question.
But on the one hand, to allow you to become more attached, more immersed, more connected to those characters, which are somebody's intellectual property, and they are created and they are owned by them in this, and they have a value. But we have now a good, rich history of allowing these things to exist in different ways, in different places out in the world, in order for the people that are fans of them to relate, to connect, and now to interact with them in new ways. Finding the balance between being fairly compensated and for those usage, and at the same time to allow people to do things new and fun and exciting with it. It's somewhere between, there are lines there. That's all I'm saying.
So maybe we're in the Napster period and we haven't yet had the iTunes store moment.
Yeah, which you're going to. There's no question about it. And these tools are brilliant. They are incredible. And I think there's so much focus on how are they going to change. Here's it. Television came after movies. It didn't change movies. And YouTube came after TV. It didn't change TV. And TikTok came after YouTube. So there's something new coming, and that to me is the really most exciting thing about it. You're going to hear from people here on the stage today, some of the most talented people that are really pioneering these new tools of storytelling, and with it is actually going to come a new form of storytelling. And that to me is the most exciting part of it. It's not as how is it going to affect movies. It's going to allow filmmakers to actually, I think probably in the same way that CG made 2D animation movies much richer experiences, and same thing's going to happen here.
Well, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. I'd love to keep talking. Everyone, please thank Hurry and Jeffrey. Thank you so much.
please welcome to the stage Axios business editor, Dan Primack.
Oh, wow. There's a lot of people here. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. We want to kind of shift the conversation a bit into how AI is impacting, kind of revolutionizing the enterprise network. And there's no one better to do this with than Kate Johnson, CEO of Lumen. Kate. So, Kate, you were at Microsoft before taking over as CEO of Lumen. And when you came into the company, it was, and to some extent still is, it was viewed as a kind of traditional telecom company. It brought fiber to people's houses, to businesses. You're re-architecting the company and arguably the architecture. Why do you see the future not as a traditional telecom company and really more as an AI infrastructure company?
Very important question. Telecom hasn't really innovated in a long time. Products are commoditized. Telecom in general ceded innovation to the tech companies, to digital upstarts, to other industries, and really hunkered down on continuing to build out infrastructure, but didn't really think about value-added advanced services digitally on top of that. And right now, the networks of yesterday, they don't serve enterprises who want to use AI to transform their business. Those networks are not big enough, they're not fast enough, they're not secure enough, they're not intelligent enough. But Lumen's got this incredible fiber network that's within a couple of milliseconds of 97% of the businesses in North America. And we saw a huge opportunity to seize the day, especially since AI is the fastest diffusing technology in the history of mankind.
Was there an aha moment for you internally where you're like, okay, we need to make a big switch?
I think to say there was an aha or that there was some sort of clairvoyance is just not really a thing. I think we've all been watching this story unfold. It's not, quarterly or annually. It's daily.
Yeah.
Right? And so knowing that we had to transform the company, that we were actually starting from not a great place a couple of years ago. Now we're in a fabulous place, in large part because of some of the work that we've done. We kept learning and talking to our customers and to our ecosystem partners. And we saw very clearly that the hyperscalers, the biggest technology companies on earth and the social platforms, they were going to make big bets on training their AI algorithms, and AI needs data, data needs data centers, and those data centers need to be connected. And we were the best network, of choice. And so we saw huge demand, and that's how we booked $8.5 billion of connectivity deals with those hyperscalers last year alone.
When you were talking to your enterprise customers, were they saying to you, we want to do X, Y, and Z with AI, but we can't? I mean, we literally can't because it's not working because the networks aren't serving us properly?
I would say that there's a pretty significant segment of advanced digital companies that recognize the gap. And then there's the lion's share of enterprises that haven't used AI enough to really understand that gap. And so we're partnering with those more advanced companies, but we are one of them. So we had to use AI in order to transform our business. We are building self-healing networks. We're building intelligent sales, intelligent customer service, et cetera. All of that needs AI. It started with...
Can I just ask, when you say intelligent sales, you mean bots?
I mean a combination of agents plus people. It's a combination.
What does agent mean to you? I'm just curious because I think almost everyone on the stage is going to have a different definition.
Okay, agentic AI is basically, I think you can call it a bot, but it's an agent that's in service of a certain functional outcome.
Why did Lumen not decide to do both? In other words, continue to serve its consumer fiber to the home base, and then also do enterprise AI, be all things to all customers?
Why did we do a deal? 2 weeks ago, we announced a deal with AT&T to sell our consumer fiber business to AT&T for $5.75 billion, and it's just the fiber to the home piece. So we saw two things. Number one, AI, fastest diffusing technology in the history of mankind, needs fiber networking. And then the demand curves for fiber to the home and wireless are converging. And we're in a position where we can go big and have a right to win in the enterprise space, providing fiber networks. And we didn't have the kind of scale where we could win like that in consumer, but AT&T did. So it was a better together story. So we sold that business, and now we are an enterprise digital networking company.
You still have a little bit of consumer stuff left, though. For example, you've got the copper-based to the home. Is the goal to eventually divest all the consumer parts of Lumen?
Well, I think the copper networks serve both enterprise and consumer. And they're legacy products. They're the networks that aren't serving the AI economy. However, for Lumen, they throw an enormous amount of cash. So they're financially important to the company as we transform. And they also have, I'll call it the secret sauce, the way that we're transforming the architecture and the way that we serve technically our enterprise customers has a lot to do with those copper networks and the assets that we could reuse.
I'm wondering, since you announced the AT&T deal, now granted it's been basically a week at this point, the share price hasn't really moved up or down, really. It's been relatively flat. Surprised? Yeah, I mean, given what you said, and obviously you had signaled earlier that you were probably going to do something like this, but if this is the big transformation of the company, what are investors missing? Hey,
look, so am I ever surprised by Wall Street? Heck no. The job is not to, it's like poker face. Sure, what next? But the reality is that this is a complex space that not a lot of people understand critical infrastructure and the role that it plays. Not a lot of people understand the growth path that we see. We are transforming Lumen and using the new things that we're selling to enterprises in the way that technology companies have been doing for a long time, in the way that me and my leadership team learned at various technology companies. We see it very clearly. We know that markets take a while to metabolize things, but we're really confident in our right to win in this space. The other thing is, Dan, this is really important. Transformations don't happen overnight. And any given day, week, month, or quarter, the stock price is, you just can't get distracted by it. You got to focus on your customers. And we're focused on enterprise customers and what we know they will need to thrive in the AI economy, and we're building that for them.
You mentioned poker face. Let me ask you a poker question, which is the cliche is, if you look around the table and you can't find the sucker, it's probably you. If Wall Street isn't buying this transformation necessarily, are you the sucker at the table?
Wow, that's a heck of a question. Hell no. And I basically see a very important need in working very closely with customers. We also see uptick in demand. We've improved our business results materially, coming in at a quarter of the shrink rate on the legacy side of the house than the rest of the industry. We're turning the company around. Am I concerned about, Wall Street's ability to metabolize all of the changes that we're doing? No, they're pretty smart as well. And I think there are phases to a transformation. Step one, free cash flow. Boom, we got it. Step two, grow your EBITDA. Boom, we called the ball at the end of the year. Step three, grow your revenue. That's in the plan, and that's what we're working on right now. So I feel really good about it.
Yeah, I'm wondering, you talked earlier about connecting the data centers. Is Lumen, and maybe it's both, but when you look at the business and the way you look at it, is it to connect data centers primarily, or is it to sometimes bypass them and to basically bypass the data centers and go straight to the enterprise customer?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's something called hybrid architecture. And, the cloud companies back a decade ago said, put your data in the cloud. There are a lot of CIOs that said, heck no, I'm never doing that. And now look what's happening, right? But there's a huge amount of data that's not in the cloud. Yeah. It could be on-prem, it could be at the edge, it could be in a data center, it could be in a cloud company, or it could be spread everywhere. We are everywhere, users are everywhere, applications are hosted everywhere, and data is everywhere. You need a network that's flexible and agile enough to keep up with processing data and providing insights no matter where the users are, and that's what we're building. And it's part infrastructure, which we've already got a very significant moat compared to the rest of the companies on the planet in terms of our physical infrastructure, and a digital platform to make it easy to consume these services and design the kinds of companies that you want.
If the enterprise, generically speaking, your customers, if they continue adopting AI in the way you expect, and which I think almost everybody in this room expects, there's been a lot of talk about GPU bottlenecks at the data center. Are we facing, or will we be facing, a networking bottleneck?
We already are there. So I am working with a Fortune 500 CEO who has data in one cloud and needs to get it to another cloud, cannot actually go through the traditional architecture that you asked me about earlier with the interconnects because it's too slow, it's not secure enough, and it's not intelligent enough. And she and I are working on leveraging our direct fiber access to be able to bypass that. This is a very advanced technology company and one that is far ahead and out in front in terms of providing AI and digital services to other enterprise companies and knows that she needs these networks. And so we're letting companies like that influence the roadmap of how we build the digital platform to reshape networking.
There'll be a bunch of talk, I think, at this event today about policy in Washington, D.C. I assume you've spent some time down there. If you had the president's ear or Congress's ear or could even flip a switch and change something, what would be, from a policy perspective, the one thing you would like to see the United States do that it's not currently doing?
You're not going to be surprised. Look, critical infrastructure is boring until it becomes critical, right? And so being able to go fast. Building out networks takes a long time on the physical side, and we need to be able to go fast. It's an issue of national importance, right? National security, innovation.
So are we talking things like permitting?
Macroeconomic development. We need go-fast buttons for all of those kinds of things. I think permitting reform is on the top of everybody's list. How do you build a path from California to New York as quickly as possible? Think of how many municipalities you have to go through. Think of how many states you have to go through. That would be one example. I think there's we have a lot of access in Washington, D.C. I know there's a lot of very constructive dialogue and sometimes debate about what does good look like in terms of supporting infrastructure companies like ours to be able to go fast to help the country be competitive.
Do you feel that the conversation is moving in D.C. is moving fast enough?
I think it's late, but moving very quickly. So
Why
we're very
is it late?
pleased.
What was the delay? I mean, was the last administration not paying enough attention?
I think that we probably saw this coming over the past decade, and it really just became sort of commonly understood that our critical infrastructure is not in a good place. And I'm talking specifically about like data center build-outs, power, space, cooling, and fiber connectivity in the past couple of years. So I think these conversations, it would be great to already have the answers and to be going fast. But I got to tell you, I'm pretty pleased with how much we've accomplished in terms of getting awareness on this issue.
Do you feel, and I don't know how much insight you necessarily have this, but when you look at other countries, do you feel others are doing better than us at the build-out piece, the physical build-out piece?
That who was doing better?
Are other countries doing better at it than we are?
I think we have to remain paranoid and assume that everybody's doing great because that's the key to innovation here is to constantly inspire to be the best in the world. I think there are some other very rich countries that you can imagine are doing some pretty darn interesting things innovation-wise. And I think we just have to be vigilant about our commitment to ensuring that the companies who have made this country what it is today are given the ability to go fast to ensure that we maintain our leadership technology-wise.
Do you expect that most other major telcos at some point will make the same shift that Lumen is making?
I think what we're seeing,
or at least try to.
So, hey, look, telco is a really tough space to understand. You've got, very large companies focused on consumer and that fiber to the home and the wireless convergence, and that's, how they want to get their return on dollars invested. And then there are pure play networking companies that aren't investing in a digital platform. Right now, Lumen stands alone in its vision to wrap a digital platform around a physical network to make it easy and agile to use these services.
When you think of the future of the home user, the consumer user, me, you in your own house, are the current networks going in, are those going to be sufficient in 10 years, 15 years?
I think 10 years, maybe 20, no way.
Really, that's interesting. Final question for you. You talked about how you're using AI inside of Lumen. Talk about that a little bit, kind of what you currently see as the best internal use case, and then also in your personal life. What's your best use case right now for AI?
My go-to is to use ChatGPT personally to ensure that my kids and husband, are on track, and I make sure that we,
On track? What does on track mean?
Oh, giving them the right answer. I love answering the question that nobody at the table can answer, and then saying like, I didn't come up with it. It was right here, you ding-dongs. But in all seriousness, I use it every single day. I am, not necessarily current on all the technology topics that I want to be current on, and it takes me a very short period of time to get savvy really, really fast. Learning about companies, doing a customer briefing. Look, there's no reason why you shouldn't use Microsoft 365 Copilot, for example, in order to create.
Still have some stock from the old Joe.
I do. In order to create, a briefing pack, because it takes everything from the outside and everything from our systems inside about what we know about this customer, combines it and makes the briefing really punchy and quick. We're using it in sales, we're using it in customer service, we're using it in operations, we're using it in engineering, and we're very toe forward. I mean, this is how we're transforming the company, and it's also how we're positioning our critical infrastructure to help other companies. So we got to be great at this.
Kate, thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thanks.
Put your hands together for our View from the Top moderator, Axios publisher, Nicholas Johnston.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nicholas Johnston. I'm the publisher of Axios. Thank you so much for being here today. This is our second time in New York City for an AI Summit. It's awesome to see such a huge crowd out today. Thanks for being here. Also, a huge thanks to all of our partners. Nothing we do at Axios is possible without the support of our partners. The investments we make in journalism around the country, awesome events like this, convening folks together. So a huge thanks to BCG for helping make today's event possible. And I'm very excited to welcome to the stage for a View from the Top conversation from BCG. This is someone who talks to a lot of executives about navigating transformation, including AI. Their managing director and senior partner, Vlad Lukic. Vlad, welcome to the Axios stage. How are you, sir?
Very good. Good to see you.
Great to see you. Let's start big picture. What I love talking with folks from BCG is you folks bring data and research, and you recently led a study looking at how leaders should confront and deal with AI. Unpack some of what you learned as part of that research.
We have to do studies because when we tell people what's going on, they don't trust us, so we have to bring data. So the most recent study we did was over 1,000 companies trying to find out what's happening with AI, right? A few surprising things. Over 75% of them are with budgets in this year deploying AI at scale. But only 25% of them have a line of sight to value creation from those activities.
That's a big gap.
It's a pretty big gap.
What's in the middle there? They're spending money without realizing where to go?
It's interesting. It's a combo of fear and worry that they're going to fall behind if they don't start investing into it, right? And they feel urgency to do something about it. But one of the failure points is also they think of it as a project. We're going to just start, we're going to do it, and then when this AI thing is over, we move on. And very few of them actually think of it as something that needs to be part of their DNA and totally wired into their operating model.
I want to come back to the DNA part, but take a little bit of a detour just to talk about agentic AI, just as a topic. Like, as we wrap our heads around what AI is, that's a huge piece of it now. How does that fit into the way organizations are kind of setting up these roadmaps?
Well, there was, when we think about agents, think about flying planes, right? Like, autonomous pilots have been driving planes for the last 20, 30 years. And we don't have conversations around, is that safe, is it not safe, should we use it, should we not use it? So the fact that a lot of folks are now super excited about these new agents is the fact that we can bring in LLMs into the mix that give you a chance to reason and give you some choices and simulate a bit of thinking in the process, right? So that's what's happening right now. And a lot of companies are saying, maybe if I can deploy these thinking agents in there, it can help me do things in a different and faster way. So it's just a new moment that's happening right now.
But it's interesting that you mentioned pilots there, like an occupation that a lot of us probably trust quite a bit whenever we get on an airplane. And the concern around LLMs is that trustworthiness. How can companies navigate that to make sure that they're implementing things that they can trust?
Yeah, and it comes down to the basics. Being super clear around what is the business objective, what are you solving for, versus let's just deploy it and see what comes out of it. So that need to be you need to be crystal clear around the business objective. And then two, do it in bite-sized chunks so that you can test what's coming in, what's coming out of it, and you can make sure it's being done the right way. And then you start stringing it all together versus deploying one all-knowing agent.
It's interesting you mentioned this. This is something that's comes up in a lot of AI conversations I have with folks, is that it was previously, it's like, well, let's just get an LLM and see what it does. It's no, find an LLM to do a specific thing and give it a specific task? Is that where you see success?
Correct.
In companies?
And start top down from what are we solving for, right? And is it a different customer experience? Is it solving inefficiency in the process? Is it giving us information at a different moment in time when we need to make a critical decision? Once you have that anchor, that true north then gives you clarity on should you even have an LLM in that part of the step, or if yes, which type of them, etc.
Right. In your research and in your conversations with executives, what separates those who get it right versus those who don't?
Yeah, so there are a few things that I found surprising, but then when you step back, it actually is super obvious. The first one is they do fewer things, which I found counterintuitive. I thought that the leaders are going to be having many more use cases where they're deploying these things, right? But the leaders actually do fewer things, but they stick with them longer and they go deeper in solving roadblocks to actually deploy these solutions. So that's one big pattern.
Yeah.
The second one is they go into the guts of the business. They go into the core workflows. And then if you think about it, my surprise was, why would you go at the essence of the business with something that is unknown? Well, reality is that's where the value is. That's where the high stakes are.
Right.
That's where you create a competitive edge. And therefore, the ones that succeed don't shy away from going into the guts of the business. And then the last one is, they're very aggressive in reshaping the incentives and the workflows and how they do things, right? The operating model, and they don't shy away from it.
It sounds like the advice you would give to an executive who throws up their hand not knowing what to do is just focus. Pick a thing at the core of your business and go straight at that instead of seeing AI as just a cure-all for everything.
Yes, and make it your agenda item.
Yeah.
Make something that you are actively engaging on and pushing top down to
Like something at the executive
force
level.
the conversations on it, yes.
Well, bring us into the real world. So many AI conversations are theoretical. Like, have you seen real applications of executives who have thought correctly, who have brought that kind of focus and have actually moved the needle? Like, what are some examples?
Yeah, like
you have in your mind?
hundreds of examples, right?
Yeah.
But if you take in insurance, underwriting processes are being cut down from 20 days to a day. Claims processing is being cut down from 2 to 3 weeks down to hours, right? In the banking sector, we are seeing dramatic impact on just reviewing the applications at a totally different pace, right? In retail, publishing a new product online, we're talking about minutes now versus in the past could be weeks before you could publish something. With one of the clients who took a marketing campaign from 2 weeks from 2 months down to a couple of days. So these are dramatic improvements.
And are you seeing this have material impact? Like, this is saving money, they're able to change how they hire, they're able to change who they hire, are they having material impacts for these companies?
Yes and no. I see it when the thing that they have solved for was a bottleneck in the process before. Right? If I can now do something much faster, but I don't do anything with my extra time, or my customer doesn't experience it in a different way, or I don't translate it into my pricing, there is zero impact. So what differentiates really the performers that are seeing returns is they focus effort on those processes and steps that are actually a bottleneck today, and it makes a difference versus it was just, I'm more efficient now, but I'm not capturing it.
Is there something just over the horizon that you're really excited about? Like, what is the next thing that we're going to be talking about when we're back on stage in a year from now? What do you think will be the focus of it?
I think there's no one thing. It's a collection of these things. I'm expecting the costs of getting this technology to continue dropping. I'm expecting that accessibility of it is going to continue to be better. Reliability is going to keep getting better. The game changer for me is going to be that more folks are using it and are more comfortable with how to use it and be more effective at it.
They're learning those steps on how to focus it on specific things, like actual use cases instead of like, we do AI.
Correct. And going back, it's fascinating when I compare executives in companies that I would call AI first or digital natives versus those that are more traditional. The ones that are in the native kind of category, they talk about business objectives, the customer needs, the friction points, all the stuff that business people talk about. Then I go to the more traditional companies and the business leaders are talking about, is this real? How much it costs? How fast is it going to come? Should we really do it or should we wait? So they don't spend any time talking about business, right? And this is what I'm seeing. When this changes, you're going to start seeing much more adoption and deployment.
Got it. Before we get the hook here, I'd like to end on one fun thing, because we're at an AI summit. It's going to be one AI thing. How are you using AI in your personal life? Give me a fun use case.
And I can say that I take my daily Axios newsletter and pop it into
Please do not.
for the summary. I'm starting, I use it daily for a huge range of things, but the one that I've been testing with recently is simulating conversations before going into them. There's so much info about any one of us, so if I go to meet with a CEO, I said, if we're going to have the following topic, what will be the questions on top of her mind that she's going to be passionate about and I need to be ready for? And it's fascinating.
You have the LLM role play the person you're going to have a conversation.
Correct.
And you play yourself.
And I play myself and I have the conversation.
How similar when you go to talk to the real person?
It's fascinating. I actually tell them when I get there that I did that. Oh boy, does it change the conversation. They're like, what did it say? And then I read the questions.
He said you'd exactly say that.
They're like, well, let's start there, right? So it's actually pretty interesting.
All right, now we're inside the matrix. That is an awesome use case. I'm going to go downstairs and use it right now. Vlad, thanks for being here. Thanks to BCG for making this possible. The conversations are going to continue with my friend Ashley Gold.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot.
Please welcome Axios Pro Tech Policy Reporter, Ashley Gold.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being with us this afternoon. AI isn't just about convenience, it's about prediction. And no field knows prediction like weather. Rohit Agarwal is CEO at the Weather Company, where AI is being used to model climate patterns, improve forecasting, and help communities better prepare for environmental change. Rohit, come on out.
Hey, how are you?
Thanks so much for being with us today. Luckily, we have a beautiful day in New York City, so we don't have to talk about the weather all too much to kick off this conversation. But we are here to talk about AI, and you and I were just talking backstage about how AI has something in common with your former job at SoundCloud, and you're saying AI and music are very similar. That's kind of a fun thing to start on. Do you want to tell us why?
Yeah, sure. We like to think of the Weather Company as being an OG AI company. We've been building forecasts and helping people prepare and plan for decades. And if you think about the music industry, if you think about the services that you use in the music industry, you might sort of recognize that you're getting a lot of music recommendations. And those recommendations are actually a form of OG AI as well. So the ways in which the methods and the models and the math are used in both the music industry and the weather industry are really similar. And that's a really exciting opportunity, I think, for what's to come.
And what is uniquely difficult about forecasting weather, being correct, making a good prediction that people can rely on, that makes it suited for using AI applications? And conversely, what makes it, in some cases, not right for using AI applications?
Great question. I think that when you consider the scale at which we are forecasting, you really need, again, to use a lot of math, models, and methods. So how many points on Earth do you think that we forecast the weather for? Millions or billions? Billions, 2.2 billion points on Earth. And we do that every sort of X minutes. And in order to do that, you have to have a lot of compute, but you have to have really, really powerful models. And you can't rely on a single model. You have to have hundreds of models that help you predict what is sort of the best forecast for you in a hyper-localized way. And as we move forward, there's going to be different methods that we actually add to our model of models. There's going to be a really interesting opportunity for us to think about how to use AI in new ways to solve new problems for customers, which is not just the forecast, but actually the insights and intelligence on what to do with that forecast in order to live the life that you want to live or you want to lead. And then interestingly and increasingly, what we're finding is that weather means business. All businesses and all enterprises have a high dependency on weather in order to run their businesses or to serve their customers. And so we see AI as a really integral and effective component in helping those businesses serve their customers.
Can you give us some examples of some personalized insights an AI application could give us about weather that could impact either your personal life or your work life? Like something we're not even thinking about that AI could be helping us with?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different applications. So for example, if any of you are skiers, how could our computational models around forecasting the weather plus AI deliver you a better ability to decide whether to go to mountain A or mountain B? So, for example, AI can be really powerful in giving you a probabilistic forecast rather than a deterministic forecast. A deterministic forecast is ultimately telling you what is the most likely scenario. A probabilistic forecast is giving you all the combinations of what might or could happen, and they will help you decide which mountain you should go to. So I think that's just one of many examples. Another one is, what if we could actually tell you on a particular day or week or time of day whether you should take your pet out for a walk before it gets too hot and they actually will get hurt? And wouldn't it be fun if we actually deliver that message to you knowing that you're likely to have a pet, that you're likely to choose a morning or afternoon walk, and that you have a type of dog that actually needs a lot of exercise? So if we actually mix all of that signal together and deliver you a point of intelligence, that can be really powerful and helpful.
And getting away from AI for a minute, obviously weather forecasting has gone on for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's based in some very old school technology and sort of just physical things that you have to have out in the atmosphere at weather stations that meteorologists use. So where is AI truly not applicable in the sort of basics of forecasting weather?
Yeah, I think ultimately one of our superpowers is that we actually use lots of these models and math, but we think that our secret sauce is also in how we apply talented scientists and meteorologists to the formula to ensure that there is checks and balances against what those models are effectively communicating and computing, so that we can ensure that we are delivering an accurate forecast for our customers, whether they be you, individuals, or businesses. A great example, or a simple, fun example, is a model might suggest that there's a thunderstorm in a particular area, let's say New York City. But what our scientists and our meteorologists might find is that that's actually a flock of birds and not a thunder shower. And so having that ability to go in and micro-correct a forecast at scale is actually a really powerful method that allows us to actually, by independent measurement, be the most accurate forecaster in the world.
So we're not yet at the point where AI could have seen that it was a flock of birds.
We are not necessarily at that point, and ultimately we'll see if we'll ever be at that point, but I think that we believe that it's AI plus great talent humans with great skills that actually creates a really incredible experience that solves customer problems.
And speaking of that data, so much of what you're able to do is because of what NOAA and the National Weather Service gathers every day at the federal level. So what have these cuts to the National Weather Service and NOAA meant for your business, and how have you dealt with a lack of staffing in some of these field offices?
So give me a second, I have a prepared statement. No, I'm just joking. So look, ultimately, we believe that delivering the world's most accurate forecast leverages a really rich and deep relationship between private and public sector. And we leverage those relationships to ensure that we are delivering a world-class forecast and world-class insights to all of you. And ultimately, that information and those insights is computed and calculated in a lot of different ways. We are actually very fortunate because we've been spending decades on refining that process, and it makes us independent of any single source. And ultimately, the more sources of information that we have in order to be able to calculate that, the more accurate we will be, and therefore the more problems of each of us we can serve and solve, the more lives we can protect, the more families we can help plan and prepare for. And so ultimately, that's the set of conditions that we're constantly considering as a company and taking our responsibility in delivering those services to all of you seriously.
Is there ever a future where weather forecasting can all be done by the private sector and you don't need the government's data anymore?
That is definitely over my qualification level. We think that, again, it is really important, it is really powerful to have public and private sector participation and partnership. And what we've seen And what hopefully all of you experience is the outcome of that, which we think, by the feedback that we get from hundreds of millions of consumers around the world, the feedback that we get from over 2,000 businesses that we support, from customers such as the major aviation companies of the US, who ensure that 25,000 flights deliver each and every one of you safely and comfortably from point A to point B. We think that that set of conditions that we've created is world-class. Certainly can get better. In case any of you have ever relied on us and been rained on, then we got to get better. But we think it's a really, really effective service relative to how it's constructed.
A lot of what we talk about around AI and some of the problems that might arise is the idea that the data can be biased. So you guys are dealing with a lot of data, a lot of customer inputs, but it's unique. It's weather data. It's not so much people's personal data that you're working with. So how does bias come up in using AI for weather?
Sure. We have a number of different safety valves that help us assess the kinds of content that we are compiling in order to create a forecast. We obviously have really robust and rich relationships with consumers, all of you, through some of our brands. Hopefully you've heard of them, the Weather Channel, Weather Underground, Storm Radar. You provide us specific authorized signal about what your interests and activities, and from that we identify what your behaviors are, and we mash all of that up in order to be able to deliver you, what we believe is compelling capability, compelling insight information, hopefully and increasingly over time, compelling content. And the mix of all of that is hopefully done in a way where we're really mindful of making sure that how we use AI and how we actually use your own signal and how we use that with the models and math that we've perfected over decades actually deliver the right information. I think one more thing that's of note, we also think that AI should be playing a bigger role in our customer service stack. Our talent in that area relative to the amount of customers and companies that we support is, as you can imagine, a pretty big gap. We think that using modern technology to help secure and understand the signal that you give us about what may be wrong or what may be inaccurate can actually help speed up the process of making sure that we are training our systems in such a way where we can deliver more and more accurate information to you.
And we're living in an era of extreme weather with floods, hurricanes. How has using AI at the weather company helped you or augmented the way that you plan for that and you get these messages out to people to be prepared for what's coming?
Yeah, we, again, take in signal both from various models that exist in the market, the models that we create ourselves. We take the signal that you give us, and ultimately that allows us to inform you both proactively, but also ensure that when you arrive at our services, we're identifying who you are, where you're from, what the conditions around you might look like, both now and in the future, and starting to deliver that to you in an intelligent way. I think, interestingly, what we're also seeing is that that kind of signal is also really important to enterprises. For example, if you're an insurance company, you're starting to want to understand how should you think about how to insure different parts of the country based on how weather is changing. If you're in the agriculture business, you want to be able to understand what kind of crop yield that you're going to receive over time based on previous weather conditions and how that has impacted crop yield. So you want to be able to predict that. If you are in the beauty business, you want to know how you can anticipate what the weather conditions are going to look like and how you need to actually use that as an opportunity to advertise to consumers about what kinds of products that you have you want to put in front of them for their consideration. There's a whole litany of cases about how we use AI and how we use data, both in the forecasting models as well as in our consumer population and our enterprise context, that we actually can bring forth to all of you as sources of insight.
And on that note, we do have to wrap up. We're out of time, but thank you for your compelling look at where AI and climate intelligence intersect. And thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Good seeing you.
Welcoming back, Ina Fried.
So next up, we are joined by a governor who's putting AI front and center of her tech policy agenda. Please welcome New York Governor Kathy Hochul. Thanks so much. First off, I think we're both big sports fans, although I think yours are more concentrated in Buffalo than my teams.
I love all my New York teams. All the ones that play in New York in particular. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. We have a very lively
I'd like to annex
crowd.
the Meadowlands and bring them back home for anybody who's paying attention. I think I'm going to run on that.
You just have to annex the Meadowlands.
I'm bringing them. If Trump can take Canada, I could at least be able to get the Meadowlands, right?
You've focused a lot on bringing high-tech jobs to New York, not just AI, but chips. I think there was another announcement today. Global Foundry is going to increase its investment by another $3 billion. Talk about those efforts, but also in the context of what's coming with AI. I mean, if the predictions are right, we had the Anthropic founder, Dario Amodei, saying, this could be half of jobs over a few years. Is it enough to just have incentives to bring high-tech jobs here? If generative AI eliminates this much jobs, is even retraining feasible? Like, what do we really need?
No, it's all in the realm of possibility. I want New York to be the home of innovation. We always have been. All the great inventions, all the technological revolution that preceded me. IBM is home here. Micron will soon find its way here, and that's 50,000 jobs in upstate New York. I'm from Buffalo, as you may have figured out from the first question. That's a lot. That's for an economy that you see based on manufacturing and building. And my dad and grandpa were steel workers. And now my dad left the steel plant and started a tech company back in the 60s. So I'm hardwired to be part of an economy that's devoted to risk. The people are willing to go out there and do something that's quite unprecedented, but also the returns are very high. So I want New York to be that place that people look to, as they already are. I mean, we have over 2,000 AI startups right now. But your question is, will these new jobs of manufacturing, semiconductors, for example, and others, will that replace the jobs that can be lost? It does not have to be that way. AI can increase productivity dramatically. So why can't we harness that to be the most productive nation on the planet, that we can have more output and use human capital in the ways that have not been harnessed before because people are too busy working on an assembly line in the past. Let's take that talent and refocus it on innovation. We have a workforce, for example, of over 188,000. I have a plan to train 100,000 New York State employees, train them in the uses of AI, how it can supplement us, how we can be more responsive to the public. I'm not looking to eliminate their jobs. I want them to have people have a better customer experience when they come into a DMV or other offices. So I see great potential here. And I leaned hard into this. What we've done. We'll talk about Empire AI, I presume. But this is something that's so natural. I'm very competitive. I'm proud that New York City is now the #1 destination for new tech jobs. I mean, that's us. I won't name any other cities or what coast they're on, but...
Because on my flight here, I left a few AI companies in San Francisco to come here.
Anybody not a New Yorker here?
All right.
I just pointing out. I mean, this is the smartest people on the planet. They're here, and they're saying they're New Yorkers, so just an observation.
So one piece is obviously, as a sports fan, it's hard to beat home field advantage. So jobs is obviously one big piece of this, but another is making sure that society is ready to adapt and use it safely. I want to broaden out, but one place to start, we had a conversation with Aura, which is a startup that's working on, how do we make this safe for kids and families? And obviously that's something you've also been focused on. How do you see the role of AI in education? You've had some bills around phone use, around deepfakes among students. How do we make sure that kids are learning the technology they need to be learning, but also protected from chatbots that might increase addiction and that sort of thing? What else do we need?
No, New York State is nation leading when it comes to protecting our children. And I can go into the details because we enacted these last year against a lot of opposition, but I said to the the big tech companies that were, saying, well, we were able to kill this in some other states, we plan on killing it in New York, I said, why don't you get out of the courtroom and come into my conference room and we'll talk about this. There is a path forward. But I know all of you have kids, and I'm sure you want someone to be looking out for them. Well, I'm New York State's first mom governor, and I look out for all the kids. So that's where I approach this from, is what we can do to protect our children, but not unnecessarily constrain what AI is all about and the potential. So we did this, but I'll tell you, what's most concerning is what Washington did, their House Republicans just did a few days ago. And if this gets through the Senate, it says that no state or municipality can regulate any form of artificial intelligence for the next decade. So that means my ban on sexual exploitation of young girls on social media and using AI. And the fact that there are, these AI undressing sites. In the first half of 2024, there were 16 sites that had 200 million views. I mean, this is what's going on to our kids, our girls sitting in high schools, and we have to stop that. So I have a whole list of reforms. I encourage every other state to undertake it, because I right now am not holding my breath that Washington will have the courage to stand up and do what's right, which really should be a nationwide policy to protect our children. We'll keep at it, and I'm concerned we'll see the Trump administration in court once again, because this is a real growth industry for lawyers, right? I'm getting sued, I'm suing them, and I'm a lawyer too. I just probably make more money on the other side, but I like what I do.
So what I hear from the tech companies all the time is, we're fine with regulation. We just don't want a patchwork of regulation. We don't want different regulations in 50 states. Are they being genuine when they say that, or do they just not want regulation?
Well, then here's what we'll do. We'll let you work with New York State, as we did. We will be the gold standard. I was just with a room full of crypto leaders yesterday. I said, you want to do virtual currency in New York? Because we will have the good housekeeping seal of approval. We always do things. Make sure it's protecting our citizens, our consumers, our viewers, and we'll always have the highest standards. So come join us, and then you can create it here with us and replicate, other states can replicate it. So I'm happy to do that. As a former member of Congress, really happy I'm not there right now, but I know that this is really Washington's responsibility, because it's hard for companies to have a different policy they have to adhere to in 50 different states. That is not ideal.
So if we don't want 50 regulations and Congress seemingly is not going to do anything, could you work with other states?
Oh, yeah.
Is there efforts already in that regard?
There's a Democratic governors organization that are more forward-thinking in this space, and we do work together. We share ideas, but our legislation is just 1 year old now, and I'm sure they want to see our law is 1 year old, the regulations are following, so there's a little bit of work to do, but that's exactly what we do. We share best practices.
So, as we've alluded to, there's a bunch of individual policies in place in New York, laws that have passed around things like kids' privacy, deepfake porn. One thing New York doesn't have is a real comprehensive statewide privacy law similar to Washington and some other states. Does New York need a privacy bill?
We're looking at that as well. What we focused on primarily were kids right off the bat, and even with respect to social media algorithms. We are the first state in the nation to ban social media companies from bombarding our kids with algorithms throughout the day, and really many times taking them to a dark place. If a young person's contemplating suicide and they put in suicide and it comes back with not resources and support and uplifting messages to make them think differently, it tells them how to commit suicide. So when we have triggering words like that show up, we have our police alerted to that and others who are alerted to this. So this is what we're focusing on, how to send out the warning signals of what can be done. But privacy is very important to us as well. We'll get to that. I just need to take care of the kids first.
And on that front, you mentioned social media. That's obviously been a huge concern for a long time, is the impact that's having on our kids. It seems like the next thing down the road is AI companions, where they're not talking to a real person, but they're talking to an AI companion. What should that relationship? Should kids not be talking to AI companions at all?
We have in our law, and I don't know that other states have done this, that there has to be some warning or indication that this, over and over, this is not a real person. This is not a real person. We have that in our laws now. We did that already. Just to give that young person just sort of a reality check. And I can't stop the whole phenomenon from happening, but the stories that have been coming out, not just the 14-year-old in Florida who committed suicide, but the New York Times did quite a story about all the different relationships, and adults can make their own decisions. Kids are very impressionable. And those are the ones that we have to take the extra measure to protect. And we should not get any opposition from these companies at all. I mean, tell them it's bad for your image to be standing up against a mom and protecting kids. I mean, just don't even go there. It's just not worth the fight.
So every now and then, folks who've been coming to this conference for a while know, I very occasionally give out a magic wand and allow someone to, if you could wave this magic wand and have the ideal regulation in place, what would it look like? So I'm going to let you borrow, you can't keep it, borrow my magic wand. If you could wave your wand and have some ideal legislation in place around how AI can be embraced safely, what would be part of that package?
Part of that would be that there's a lot of education of people. People do not understand this gap between virtual reality and reality. And I'm afraid that's something that a lot of kids are falling into. So I would want to make sure that all your personal information is protected. Like what we did last year was our Child Protection Act. You cannot sell data collected on kids. Anyone under the 18, you cannot amass this data based on their preferences, where they're going. And not just you can no longer send algorithms to them, you can no longer sell that to other people. I think that's something adults are entitled to as well. Those are some of the privacy protections. You can't be capturing all this personal data and monetizing it. So that's an area I think we should be focused more on and get some cooperation from the companies.
I know you leave a bunch of the court battles to your very active Attorney General. I get emails from her on a practically daily basis of what she's challenging the White House on. What are the things that have happened in the first few months of the Trump administration that have you personally most concerned? What are the fights that you want more people to take up?
You do not have enough time.
We got 3 minutes.
God. I mean, my latest fight was to save offshore wind. They literally, on April 16th, pulled the plug on a 10-year, $5 billion project from a company called Equinor from Norway, which is will be powering 500,000 homes in Brooklyn with renewable energy. That is a big win for our climate, our renewable energy efforts, and to meet our climate goals. On April 16th, the Secretary of Interior gave them a stop work order. The project was going to be stopped a few weeks ago. They're losing $50 million a week. I went down to the White House. I had long conversations. I had more phone calls. And I'm proud to say we saved not just the renewable energy, but 1,500 clean energy jobs in the process. So that's the most recent. They're attacking congestion pricing. Every single month on the 21st, I get basically a hostage letter that if you don't turn off the cameras, we're going to kidnap you or whatever it is. And I usually take it and do a social media of it and throw it away. Here we go. So we're fighting on that, but also on other areas about my rights to. We just had a win in court on that, where they're threatening to withhold federal dollars. Like anytime they don't like something you do, whether it's the state of Maine, where they were, my friend Janet Mills was subjected to this. We were together in the White House when she got harassed. They threatened withholding federal dollars. We just got a temporary restraining order from them threatening to withhold our federal dollars when it came. So I can't keep it all straight. We litigated on the birthright citizenship. We're going to have a lot of complicated challenges with the immigration issue. I have to testify before the House Oversight Committee on that very issue next week. Really looking forward to that. You see who's on that committee? Check it out. And by the way, it's someone who said, I didn't even read the bill. No, it's 1,000 pages. Use ChatGPT to figure it out. Right? Or just they're claiming they did not know that there was a 10-year ban on any social media. Any AI. Oh, I didn't know. Yes, you voted for it. Just ask GPT. Anything I should worry about in here?
All right. I would love to keep the
just some humble advice for them.
I would love to keep the conversation going. Unfortunately, I know you have somewhere to go, and we're almost out of time. I have a quick question that I think only you can answer. So I love buffalo sauce, but I don't really like the bones. Do boneless wings count?
There's chicken fingers.
That's what my 12-year-old likes.
Okay, chicken fingers are close enough. No one will mock you out. But the damning thing, if you ever eat chicken wings with ranch dressing, you'll be barred from the entire region. Just don't go.
All right.
Take it from me, everybody. That's your tip, pro tip today.
All right, so you heard it here. The Meadowlands is now part of New York. Boneless wings are okay, but don't you dare put them in ranch. Thank you so much, Governor Hochul.
Thank you.
So we're going to shift gears a little bit from Trump and annexation and buffalo wings to one of the companies that's been at the forefront of how businesses use AI for a while. So May Habib is the CEO of Writer. And if you haven't heard of Writer, that probably means you don't work in the marketing department. Writer got its start really helping marketers harness AI, but they're going much further than that. So please help me welcome May Habib. So good to see you.
So nice to see you. Tough act to follow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You have any strong feelings about ranch dressing, or should we pivot back to AI?
All the flavors.
All the flavors. You should run for office. So Writer, as I told the audience, used to be really known for helping marketers harness AI. You've expanded a lot beyond that. Talk about what it is Writer is today. How many people are you? What are you guys up to?
Yeah, so we're almost 500 folks, including 200 right here in New York City. We're at One Pen and hiring like mad. We are a agentic AI platform that works with primarily Fortune 500 companies. By the end of this year, almost half will be Writer customers. And we're helping them build agents that scale. They are building, activating, and supervising agents inside of Writer across corporate functions as well as ops and back office.
I'm just going to interject for 1 second. You know, we'd love to have those that are interested in the conversation stay. If you want to have a conversation, we have a lounge downstairs. It's great. Feel free to carry on your conversation there. So agents is obviously the big talk in AI. Everyone's doing agents. I have a couple of questions that I tend to come up in general around agents. And the first and foremost to me is, look, AI, generative AI, tons of promise, does a lot of things well. It's not perfect. When I use generative AI, I get a lot of interesting stuff, and sometimes I get stuff that just isn't true. It strikes me every time I hear someone say, you know, we're turning it into an agent, I'm like, well, you're giving more power and more autonomy, more importantly, to something that really needs supervision. How do we make sure we're not giving too much autonomy too soon to agentic AI?
Yeah, totally. I was using one of the consumer models last week, and it was insisting that the year was 2024 and not 2025, right? And
I'm good with that.
yeah. When you are in an enterprise environment, there's absolutely no room for error. And the way that we approach it is by really creating primitives inside the platform that give agents scaffolding. So that is from an engineering and product perspective. From a foundation model perspective, our models are built to be the workhorse for agentic. And what that means is really long context windows that are lossless. It means inference that makes sense for the enterprise. We've got folks who run dozens of agents on our platform for the cost of 1 or 2 using standard approaches. So, you know, the ability to keep humans in the loop and designing workflows that not only provide blueprints for agents to follow, but have lots of checks and balances for the experts in a process to actually inspect the data and look at the citations and have an audit trail. All of that is essential for agents that actually work at work.
And, you know, sometimes people need a good concrete example, and it's, you know, we start talking agents, and I have this fear that, you know, somebody's in the back
We
with the
lose
whole
everybody. Yeah.
Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
Talk about what it means in real terms. You had an example recently.
Yeah.
Mars was using it, you know, because if you make candy bars, like once upon a time, Hershey's just Mars, whoever, just put the same bars on the shelves all year round. Now they've got something for every season. Talk about how they harnessed AI to make better use of those promotional seasonal things.
In CPG and retail, the impact to revenue is immense and fast. You've got real-time personalization across channel. You've got lots of customers doing that. You've got a agentic AI approach to generative AI engine optimization, which used to be SEO. And the ability for you to agentically take information about your customers or things that you've got a thesis they care about and actually in real time reach into those systems that publish the information to them, be that an e-commerce site or your own website, is very, very powerful. In financial services, we've got incredible agentic powerhouse work, agentic use cases around KYC. Right? You are a client.
Know your customer.
Yes, know your customer. You are a client at a big bank. Well, you are always doing KYC, right, across multiple products in that bank. We are now building agents that can take a client's information and actually propagate them into the various systems in the back end, product by product, and that really presents tremendous upsell opportunities to financial services firms. So a lot in client onboarding, a lot in customer service from an agentic perspective is possible, and we're really able to work objective backwards with customers, and they're not constrained to working only within the confines of legacy systems. Now the agents can really do the dirty work behind the scenes, stitching them all together.
So when I talk to most of the AI enterprise companies, what I hear is we're model agnostic, we work with everyone, that way you can plug and play and use whatever's best in the moment. Increasingly, the few big companies are spending a fortune on their models, everyone else is kind of riding the backs of those big investments and kind of specializing. So I was kind of surprised to hear you guys are still investing in your Palmyra models, you're still developing models. Why and what does that get you that you wouldn't have if you just used the models by the Anthropics and OpenAIs of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a tremendous amount of control and reliability and consistency that we provide customers, being able to, out of the box, really have a model experience that they can rely on, that's efficient, that really makes economic sense. And for us, these are models that we train on synthetic data. They are state-of-the-art models. These are 400, 500 billion parameter models that benchmark against the other labs out there. But we are maniacally focused on the enterprise. And it's why we were first to synthetic data, which allows us to be IP-friendly and commercially safe, get through all of the RFPs that the enterprise cares about, and we've kept up. Now, we are also agnostic in that in our agent builder platform, you can mix and match models, but outside of pulling a Gemini for image generation or going into a video generation or voice generation model, folks are very happy to just be able to really build quickly off of the built-in primitives built on Palmyra. And as a startup, if you can do something highly differentiated, why wouldn't you? And it just allows us to really present roadmaps to customers that our competitors who don't have their own models simply cannot. Once you are AI native, you're using LLMs to solve all sorts of problems, right? We are using our LLMs to write the integrations if there isn't an MCP server for a product or a system that someone wants to integrate to. We're using agents to build agents and all sorts of things you couldn't do if we were using third-party models.
So when we talked a year ago, I think we were sitting outside in San Francisco at Salesforce's big convention that takes over the city, and I asked you kind of where things were going, and you said, look, we're going way beyond marketing, we're going to be in all kinds of departments. That's happened. Where are you investing next? What are some of the next goals you have for Writer? Clearly, continuing to develop your own models is one thing. What else should we expect to see from y'all?
We're so excited about self-evolving models and what that means all the way up to...
That sounds really scary. Tell me what you mean.
Okay. Well, you can freeze them and then put them into production, and we're creating synthetic environments for these models to learn, et cetera. But essentially what it means is finally models that can generalize from their experience. And right now, when you train models, that training data is static, and you release them out into use cases, but they don't really learn from their experience. And if you're interacting with an agent and you're like, hey, you made a mistake, right? Like, this is wrong. Right now, there is no elegant way to actually capture that information so that when Ina uses this agent, you actually get one that's better and doesn't make the same kinds of errors and mistakes. And so for us, what we're doing is essentially building a memory layer into each layer of that model that kind of becomes the customer's like proprietary IP, that core memory that we can actually help them take model to model. And I'm really excited about what that means.
And are you going into more verticals, more international? You know, you getting ready to learn all that lingo so you can do an IPO? What are you thinking?
I like those letters. It is really exciting. I mean, what I'm so pleased about is so many of our customers now, not only are they rewiring workflows AI first, but they're like, how do we build new businesses that are AI native from the get-go? So we just came from downtown, major customer, global bank, who is going to build really incredible advisory services that are AI first from the get-go. We've got a customer in the healthcare space that is going to build a DTC business that is AI native. So I think once we are able to really increase GDP, once we're really able to increase growth rates, you know, the things that I think we as AI companies really believe this is such a net positive for society and really will create many more jobs, you know, that's going to start happening, and we're really right around the corner from that.
One of the reasons I love talking to you is you've built such an interesting business and growing so fast in so many directions. Another reason I always love talking is we tend to vibe around the conversations around how do we make sure the technology that the industry is building is equitable when we know the training data has its own biases. We know there's all these ways that left unchecked, the technology will just not produce the world that many of us want in terms of being equitable, in terms of not exacerbating income inequality, in terms of not spreading misinformation. One of the things I've warned about is it feels like now is the time to act. Like when there's bias in a system, we can sometimes still see it because it's coarse enough that what we end up with is Google churning out black founding fathers, and we can be like, wait, there's something wrong. My worry is if we don't do something in the next couple years, it just gets baked into the system. How do you think the industry is doing? Where do we need to focus more that we aren't paying enough attention to?
What I love about what the enterprise is doing is, you know, there may be this backlash against ESG, et cetera, but it's fully baked inside of the enterprise. And what I love is when folks ask us about our training data and our bias mitigation and detection. We have spent so much effort really building that scaffolding inside of our model development and training. People ask about our carbon footprint. Well, great. We've also trained models really efficiently. We run them for you really efficiently. And so, you know, inside of the enterprise, it may be quiet. People aren't headlining about it. They're not advertising it anymore, but they really do care about it. And we're building a company around responsible AI. We are one of only 2 companies globally that's got the trifecta of certifications in AI, responsible AI being one of them. Google is the only other company that's done that. And as part of you know, that whole protocol, everything from how we do permissions and access control to how we train models and then how we communicate and how transparent we are about that training, the diversity of our teams. We're 40% women. That meeting that I just talked about, it was all women on the writer side. And I'm actually in a lot of meetings where folks are like, okay, yeah, I don't really see AI companies that look like this. And it's awesome because we attract the best talent in the world as a result of both our stances and our diversity.
And you mentioned that, and I feel like we don't hear that enough. It used to be, I would hear, we have 30 years of business research that's saying diversity might be a value in and of itself, but it's also just good business.
Yeah.
And it feels like one side of the political debate has managed to turn diversity and equity and inclusion somehow into a negative. talk about, did I miss something? Did the research change? Or are those things still really important to serving a client base that I assume is also diverse?
Oh, totally. We published research on this around Davos. So many of the majority of the transformation leaders that we work with in the enterprise are people of color, are women. And so for us, really reflecting that, and these are technical leaders, but they're bridge building. They are bringing stakeholders along. They're doing a ton of change management. And, those kinds of folks right now, are really courageous in championing AI. And we want them to really feel like the writer team and our generative AI pods are really reflective of them. We've got customers who have told us in the Fortune 500, they no longer can ask their HR departments for the data on their workforce. People see how diverse we are, and they're like, ooh, how did that happen? And then I ask them the same question, and they're like, my HR department won't let me ask how diverse my team is or how many women are across the department. And it's just really sad.
So in addition to that, we have about a minute left. I'm curious, what else aren't we talking enough about as an industry? I mean, the AI, the technology is moving incredibly fast. People are trying their best to adopt it at breakneck speed. What do we need to be talking about more?
Yeah, the training is so important. At OnePen right now, we've got a packed office as we do in real life builder training. And there's a real democratization of who can be an AI engineer today. It's such a wide spectrum of technical capabilities that we can now invite to use these primitives to do really powerful stuff. And not enough employers are investing in it. Not enough vendors are leaning in to do the kind of training and certifications that make this a much more equitable kind of transformation. So I don't think we talk about that enough. We talk about 50% of jobs are going away. I don't know that I believe that at all, but it's our responsibility to really bring people along from a training and skills perspective.
Well, May, thanks again. Always great to talk to you. Great, candid conversation.
Thank you so
Everyone, May Habib.
Thanks.
I'm back. So for those of you in the room or those of you on the live stream, you're going to be glad you stayed. The folks downstairs are going to be really sad if they missed this. We're going to do one of our demos. I'm really excited about this one. Elias from Google Labs is going to come up and show a few of the technologies that I saw 2 weeks ago at Google I/O. And I believe this is the first time they've demoed them outside of that introduction at Google I/O. Elias and his team are reimagining how we interact with information, how we interact with our memories, our photos, and even ourselves through AI. So please help me welcome Elias Roman from Google. Good to see you.
Hello, my name is Elias. I'm a product manager at Google Labs. So as quick background at Google Labs, 3 core principles worth knowing. 1, we organize all of our work in terms of the futures that we're chasing. The future of creativity, the future of software development and work, the future of knowledge. So some of the new products that we've launched, and all of our products start at 0, and then we build them hand in hand with our users, are things like Notebook LM, or Flow, or Whisk, AI Studio, Jules, Stitch. Anyone a user of one of those products? Oh, wow, okay. Anyone a user of 2 of those products? 3 of those products? All right, the cross-sells are working. That's awesome, thank you. Another key principle that we operate on is co-creation. So much of what we're doing by virtue of building these AI native products is operating in a brand new space that really early on in the product development lifecycle, we work hand in hand with the intended users of the products, the communities that are most likely to be impacted by what we build. And so at I/O a couple weeks ago, you saw updates across all of our generative media models. Lyria 2 in music, VO 3 in video, Imagine 4 in imagery. All of those different modalities came together in the launch of a new product called Google Flow. Google Flow is a tool that we built with and for AI filmmakers. And even if you are not an AI filmmaker, my #1 goal after our 14 minutes is that you're inspired to try it and to create something for yourself.
And I actually did, in like the 2 minutes since we did a demo this morning, I had 2 minutes free. I'll let you see the demo and then I'll tell you what I did with it.
I can't wait to see it. Before we jump into some of the creations I've made, and I'll show you how the tool works alongside of that, I wanted to quickly play a film from one of the AI filmmakers, Dave Clark, that we worked really closely with, just so you can see what someone with incredible talent can do with these new tools.
So what we're going to see is all AI, right? No film stuff mixed in.
Exactly. The dialogue, the sound effects, the narration, the music, all of it. The visuals, of course, are all produced using VO3.
And this is one of the first tools out there that actually lets you generate the audio at the same time as the video.
I think the #1 driver of the virality we've seen around VO3 is the native audio.
All right, let's take a look.
Initial reports say we experienced a magnitude 9.0 earthquake.
Yo, I need you to stay at the house. I'm gonna come get you. Make sure moms are safe.
I'm going to leave you on a cliffhanger. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. But the lip sync, the voice generation, all of that is native in VO3. So we're going to jump right into the tool. There's a couple of different modalities I'd love to show you. Maybe we'll start with the cutest example, the image to video. What do you think? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Image. So you can do it with a text prompt or image, but image is always fun.
All right, so we're going to start imagery. The quick backstory here, one of my colleagues was hanging out with his niece, and she made a really cute illustration, and he was one of the testers of this product and thought, what if we bring it to life? Like, what if we animate it and start a new story with this drawing that she's made? And so I'm going to show you the prompt that he used that I recreated. So the prompt includes an overall vision for the clip. It'll be 8 seconds long. It includes a character animation style. It includes guidance for the camera. This person is not a film expert. They used Gemini and basically said, Gemini, take a look at this picture and help me come up with a prompt that will bring it to life in this way. So like the prompt that he actually used to generate this robust prompt is something any of us in this room could have written. So with that prompt, he brought it into Flow. He set the first frame to be exactly the picture that his niece had made, and this is the output. Okay. I don't think it gets a lot cuter than that, so it's maybe downhill from here. But the other projects I want to show you start with a different modality. So again, that started with an image as the first frame. You can also set another image as the last frame and have the model interpolate the scene between them. But the next example I'll show you just starts with text, no imagery at all. So the quick backstory here, my grandma turned 95 last month, and I wanted to give her something really special. And so I decided I would give her basically a singing birthday card. And I wanted the vibe to be like a 1950s barbershop quartet that was singing about the experiences that she and I had together. And so, just like my colleague did, I used Gemini, and I asked it to help me come up with visual and vocal descriptions of each member of the quartet.
So just to be clear, not only is the AI going to create the video, but you used another AI to write the prompt.
Exactly.
Okay.
I don't have the vocabulary to describe the visual representation and the vocal qualities in enough detail. And so that was something Gemini was just able to help me do 10 times better than I could have done it myself. So very much a co-pilot. And so you'll see vocal descriptions for singers 1, 2, 3, and 4. You see visual descriptions, and you also see a scene. By copying and paste that in each clip of this overall card, which has, I think, 5 different scenes, I'm able to get a really high level of consistency just from a detailed text prompt. And what that means is clip to clip, the only thing I'm actually changing is the lyrics. So this will also help me show off a feature called Scene Builder. So with Scene Builder, you're able to take any clip that you generate and make it part of a scene, a multi-clip scene.
Because these are generating really short video clips, like 8 seconds at a time, but this allows you to make something longer.
Exactly. Each clip is 8 seconds, and I'll just put 3 in there to start with. The actual card was 5. All right. And so then when you're in Scene Builder, you can play the entire scene from start to finish. You can click arrange and reorder the clips or delete the clips. You can, from right here, generate a new clip. But I'll just hit play, just show you the first 8 seconds to give you a sense of the feel.
Happy birthday, Grandma Eva. Happy birthday to you. Yeah.
I'll spare you the rest of it. It was very cute. It just went into detail about a bunch of shared memories. But as you can see from clip to clip, you have a lot of visual consistency that was just achieved using a text prompt. The last example I'll show you is the max level of consistency we can achieve today, and it's actually using what we call ingredients. So I'm going to jump to that one. So in this particular scene, I didn't start in Flow. I didn't start in Gemini. I started in a tool called Whisk. That's another Google Labs tool, and what it allows you to do is generate imagery using text prompts and picture prompts. And so I started off by generating the costume that I wanted, in this case a blue raincoat. I generated the scene. It was almost like a post-apocalyptic Times Square at night when it's raining. And I generated the character, the subject of this particular scene. And then I was able to select the character, the outfit, and the scene, and put them all together in this clip you see at the bottom right to get a sense of, is this kind of the vibe that I'm going for? And it was. So I moved into Flow, and I uploaded those assets in this flow. I chose ingredients to video right here in the Flow selector. I added each one of the assets, the character, the scene, and the outfit, and then I gave a really simple text prompt. So those last two examples were really complex, rich text prompts. All I had to do here was say the man wearing the raincoat in the city is walking in the city towards the camera. On the back end, Gemini understood that when I said the man, I meant that image all the way in the bottom left. When I said the raincoat, I meant the thing at the bottom right. And when I talked about the scene, I meant the thing in the middle. I didn't have to spell that out for it. It understood by analyzing the text and the imagery and understanding my intent. So that helped me create the first scene. I'm going to add that to the scene builder. And then I wanted continuity in this shot. I didn't want to jump from clip 1 to clip 2. So I'm going to add this to the scene and show you how I did it. In Scene Builder, when you want to create the next thing in the story, you have two options. If you want a hard cut, you can use Jump To. If you want a smooth consistency, you use Extend. And what Extend does is it takes the last 24 frames, so the last second of the prior clip, and it conditions the next generation on that. So let me show you what it looks like together. The plot twist I was going for, by the way, is you see this very modern scene, you think that's the action, and then the camera zooms out and you realize you're merely watching a TV commercial, but you are in the 1980s, even though this is a futuristic scene. So we'll see if I got that or not. Okay, so that was the ingredients to video flow, and also using Extend to have continuity instead of a jump cut between your scenes.
So I noticed a couple things there. One is, not only is it not a jump cut, but the characters are staying consistent. And my sense is that was a big downside in the early days. And we could even see it a little in the Barbershop Quartet. They were similar, but I wouldn't exactly say consistent. How close do you think we are to tools that just treat that as the default, where you can save a character? Because it's kind of tricky, because it's not the way generative AI inherently works. It kind of builds from scratch every time. Whereas I imagine the feedback you get from folks that want to create longer works, professional works, is, I want something consistent. I want actual characters.
I think one of the quotes that stands out to me from one of our AI filmmakers is, consistency is the holy grail. So we're investing a lot. I mean, you'll see that there's, within Flow, the ability to store a library of assets, scenes, characters, styles, objects that you come back to over and over again for exactly this reason. Like, once you develop a character, you invest in them, you extend them, you come back to them. So that's been really important.
And the other thing that I feel like always comes up in this discussion and is important to address is issues around safety, especially when you have these powerful tools. I could have taken a photo of you and started this out. I could have made it do something embarrassing. How are you thinking about that? Where do you decide to put in the guardrails versus requiring just people to behave well, which, from what I've seen on the internet, is a dangerous assumption?
I would say over the last maybe 4 months of building Flow, one of it in 3 months, it came together very fast. One of the biggest areas of investment was around safety. Like there are a lot of new modalities here. And so these are conversations with our policy teams, our research teams, our product teams. And actually to use the example that you gave, we have an even more sensitive safety configuration for uploading realistic people for exactly the reason that you mentioned.
So what could I do if I'm going to take a photo of you. They're going to give us some lovely photos from your demo. I could build all kinds of scenes. What would I be able to do and what wouldn't I be able to do?
There are a category of harms that we focus our safety stack on, and we identify the right thresholds of sensitivity for the different classifiers that assess each of those harms. And we have a baseline that we feel comfortable with for things like text to video, but then in the case of things like image to video, we set an even more conservative threshold with the sensitivities around deepfakes in mind. It's also worth noting, every generation from Flow has an invisible watermark. This is called synth ID, synthetic ID, and actually at I/O we just started rolling out a detector, so that more and more organizations can check content and see if it came from our model or not.
So at least you can tell it's AI generated then.
Exactly.
And then the last thing, there's some folks in the room that want to know, how do I get this? You have to be a paid subscriber to one of Google's AI plans. I think the AI Pro starts at $20 a month.
AI Pro starts at $20 a month with a 1-month free trial. So if you want to take me up on the challenge and create something in Flow tonight, that's a great way to do it. We also have the new AI Ultra SKU, and that's something we're really seeing the AI filmmakers gravitate towards. It's got the best models and the highest access limits.
And since I know you were all dying to know, what I did with the tool was I always bring the Lego versions of my family when I travel. I took a picture of them, I grabbed a photo of the moon, and I had them bouncing around on the moon in zero gravity. So.
Can you share that?
I will.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Elias.
Thank you.
So thank you all for being so patient and great. We have one more segment before a break, so stay seated for one more segment, then you can have some refreshments.
Give a warm welcome to our View from the Top moderator, Hope King.
Hello, everyone. It's so great to be here. Thank you for sticking around, but also just for the energy in the room. This is one of my favorite events to host here in New York, and especially on the topic of AI, because it is going to be the dominant force of our lifetime. We will have a short break, as we mentioned, but first, this next chat is really about the complexity of data security in an AI-dominant world. We have the perfect guest to sit down with me to talk about this. Rob Sobers is the Chief Marketing Officer at Varonis, which helps companies safeguard sensitive information in this increasingly complex environment. Please welcome him to the stage. Rob. All right, thanks for joining me.
Yeah.
So we've had a couple of really passionate conversations around this topic already, so I'm very excited to dive into this with you. But you and Varonis specifically have been ahead of the curve, really, in AI data security for nearly 2 decades. So I imagine there have been a few I told you so moments over this time, but I am curious, what's genuinely surprised you? What shifts or challenges did you not see coming?
Yeah, you know, Hope, I've been focused on the problem of securing the world's data for the better part of my adult life at this point. And along the way, there were moments where I was like, I am sure this is the moment where everybody else is going to care about this as much as I do. We all remember when the Target breach happened and 40 million credit card numbers got leaked on the dark web, or LinkedIn when everyone had to change their password because there was this massive leak. And Sony Pictures, if you remember that hack. So each of these moments, I kept waiting for this big epiphany to happen where companies would say, you know what, we need to invest in data security. We need to make this right. And then GDPR happened. And I was like, well, this is definitely the moment. You know, you can get fined up to 4% of your global revenue, which for a company like Apple if they mishandle EU citizen data, losing 4% of your revenue, surely that's a big enough stick to make people care. And it did change the game, but nothing has put data security at the forefront of conversations with CEOs and boards like AI. AI feasts on data, and the problem has always existed, but nothing has shone a light on it the way that AI does.
I love that word that you used, the active verb feasts. I mean, it's so true. So when you see AI feasting on data and you're looking ahead to the horizon, what other shifts do you see? When we were chatting before, you said something really provocative to me. You said, we're entering an era where agents will work with agents. What does that actually look like in real life?
Yeah, so even outside of the context of security, I just sort of see a world where the browser isn't our home anymore, and we're not going to have 50 different apps on our phone. Think about just submitting an expense report when you're done with this trip, right? What do you have to do? It's death by 1,000 tabs. You go into your inbox and then your calendar. What hotel did I stay at?
Photo albums, the receipts, yeah.
Exactly. So imagine, going from drop downs and dashboards to directives, basically telling your AI super assistant, hey, go handle my expenses from my Boston trip. And it goes and it's got connectivity into your calendar, into your camera roll, into your Expensify or whatever system. And then if it has an exception, let's say you spent too much on a dinner and the finance team rejects it, the agent speaks to the finance team's agent and just reconciles it without you, right? So that's the world that I see, happening right now. And I'm sure even cooler use cases besides expense reports are going to crop up.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that I get those phone calls quite often. So I'm feeling too seen right now.
Yeah.
But specifically at Varonis, what are you doing under the hood to actually secure the data layer that all of these AI tools now depend on? Because there are so many, and if they're working together, I imagine they get to be really, really complex.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's a human in a browser or an agent with an agent, what doesn't change is that we have to make sure that only the right entities can access the right data at all times. So what Varonis does is first and foremost understand the data in a business. So AI-powered data discovery and classification is super important so that you know where your crown jewels are, right? You don't want to protect next week's luncheon menus as carefully as you do your sort of M&A plans. And so understanding what you have, both from a risk perspective, what should I put more money into protecting, but also opportunistically, what can I use to feed these AI models? What might I want to use for training data? So that's number one. And then number two is this holy grail of ensuring the right access at all times. And in the future, when we have not only employees, but armies of AI agents acting on their behalf, there's a lot more interconnectivity and sort of these transactions occurring that could be potentially dangerous or not even malicious, but just sort of out of policy.
It just sounds like a lot on top of a lot on top of a lot. So how are you managing all of this? Is much of it done through a human workforce, or is it really looking at more automative or automation and features like that?
Yeah, so automation is in our lifeblood at Varonis. We really want to make sure that in a world where data creation is automated, that the protection of that data is also automated. It's really, truly the only way this scales, right? So a good example is we offer a service to our customers to help investigate any security alerts they might have, because many of them don't have, 100-person security teams in a security operations center. And so we have an AI do the initial investigation, sort of the part of that workflow that's kind of uninteresting, gathering log data, figuring out timestamps, maybe investigating, what we call indicators of compromise. The AI does that and sort of serves up the investigation results to a human, and then the human can kind of do the last mile, which is the really interesting part of figuring out what happened. Was it a breach, or do we have to act?
But I think the important thing there is that the automation scales, and it will help scale, and scale is really important. I think what's most fascinating about your background is that you are a developer at heart still, very much so. And so you've also seen firsthand how systems are built and how they break. But I think when we see this feasting of data, and when we see dramatically more dependency on technology and data, what is really kind of the risk? Like, what happens if we don't get security right?
Yeah, so you sort of have kind of the canonical example of someone rolling out a ChatGPT Enterprise or a Microsoft 365 Copilot and wanting to get the productivity gains. And then the first employee sort of says, hey, who are the new hires that are starting next week? And you start to see not only their names, but their background checks, right? And their social security numbers and things that you weren't supposed to see. And then the IT team kind of freaks out and unplugs it all and says, okay, we need to kind of look at the underlying security here. So that's one thing. But the other thing that we've been helping customers with, and it's kind of scary if we don't get right, is these sort of AI training pipelines. So we were working with an organization who was doing research to cure Alzheimer's. And they were feeding medical research data from different systems into this custom model. And all of a sudden, we noticed a new data flow popping up out of nowhere. And it turned out an attacker was doing something called model poisoning, where they were feeding synthetic data into the pipeline that was very subtly different than the data that was supposed to be going into the model. And when you think about the downstream impacts, that could change subtly the dosage of a medication that you're giving somebody. And so, it's super important to get the trust and security layer right so that we could take advantage of all the productivity.
It also just sounds like we still don't know what some of those emerging threats could be. I mean, we couldn't have imagined that somebody would want to infiltrate at that level for those nefarious reasons. I think that the most important question, I think, for all of us as citizens is what the impact will be on the average person that doesn't think about data security. How can you share with folks who are not as data savvy or AI savvy what those risks are to them if they don't understand the importance of this?
Yeah, well, I think more and more the world just runs on data. If you really kind of look under the hood, data tells cars where to drive now. It informs patient care, like we just talked about.
Yep.
It's sort of the engine behind a lot of society. We actually, saw an oil pipeline get shut down. If you guys remember the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack a few years ago.
Yes. That's our infrastructure.
Yeah, infrastructure. We saw what happened with the CrowdStrike incident last year, where airports were literally impacted. And so I think your average citizen isn't thinking about the underlying data layer, but they're very much impacted when that data layer isn't secure. And it's emerging in interesting ways that we haven't necessarily thought of. I mean, we've seen people sort of go for a job interview on Zoom with a completely AI-generated avatar and voice, get hired, and then infiltrate that company and steal data. It's pretty wild what we see.
You must have some stories, which unfortunately we don't have all the time for today to share, but I so appreciate you, Rob, for being here, and also for Varonis for really sponsoring and partnering with us on this great afternoon. We really appreciate it. To our audience, thank you for sticking around for this first half. We have a second half coming up, but don't forget we've got the interactive AI CEOs in the back, and also specialty lattes from Sneak downstairs. And then we have a great second half coming up with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, as well as the CEO of Runway, Chris Valenzuela. So stick around. Rob, thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Don't go too far. We'll be right back after a short break. Please grab a seat. The show will begin in just a moment. Please grab a seat. The show will begin in just a moment. Here he is again, Axios publisher, Nicholas Johnston.
Recess is over. Folks want to come back up here and grab seats. We're in the home stretch of our programming today. We've got a lot of great conversations, very cool demonstrations still to come. Before we wrap it all up, we can all head downstairs for delicious snacks and beverages and networking. But before then, of course, as I said earlier, nothing possible at Axios without the support of our partners. And so I'm very grateful for Workato. This is their second time working with us on an AI summit. They were on the West Coast last time. They're on the East Coast this time. So it's great to welcome back to the Axios stage from Workato, their Chief of AI Products and Solutions, Bhaskar Roy. Bhaskar, great to see you again. Come on up. Thank you, sir. Great to see you. So let's just pick up where we left off last time. You had a great turn of phrase when we spoke last year about the messy middle of AI implementation, but now we're moving to the magic middle. Tell us a little bit what you mean by those and that journey.
Firstly, I can't even believe it's been 6 months.
Yeah,
it just
right?
feels like yesterday that we talked about this. So, as you remember, messy middle is the core of how your business operates. Consists of complex processes that run across multiple departments, complex tech stack, which consists of cloud, on-prem, legacy applications, your data infrastructure, etc. And agents, if you think about it, means this is the event where we are talking about agents. The core aspect of agents, if it can transform that messy middle to magic middle, that's when the transformation happens in businesses. The challenge there is, since we last talked, it's still messy. Most of the businesses still have that messy middle in there. And what we are seeing when we talk to various companies is the AI or agentic AI experiments that are happening are more, I would say, on the fringes or the edges of the organization.
Right.
What I mean by that is, content creation, summarization, simple workflows
So
getting automated.
The easy things, right?
Whereas it's still, and it's still, I would say, experimental. If you ask most of them, they would say a number of those projects have not even gone production.
Right.
So, but if you look at there are a few companies who are targeting the core and looking at how they can transform the core with agentic enterprise or agentic AI. And that's what excites us.
The key upside being going into all those processes that were not built deliberately, that were probably tacked on over years and years and years and years, and bringing these new kind of AI workflow tools to bear in that middle part instead of like, I transcribed a conference call.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So you mentioned it's been 6 months, which is a lifetime in AI. Talk about how your year has gone. What have you been working on? You've had an acquisition to talk about. Share a little bit about your news.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun, busy, and rewarding year so far.
Yeah.
So firstly, we got recognized recently by Gartner as a leader, and this is the seventh time in a row. What excites me is that they put us as #1 in terms of vision as to where we are headed. So that was a big, feather on our cap. And then we launched this new platform called Workato One.
Yeah.
Right. So Workato One, think of this as this is the one platform that you need in order to bring agents to the core of your business in order to improve your overall business operations.
Let's go a little deeper on that. I think we've got a video that you can talk over that shows how it works in real time. This is how you dig into, I guess, the messy middle instead of hanging out.
Yeah. So if you'll see over here, there are 4 key components to this, right? At the bottommost layer, there is the connectivity.
Yeah.
This connectivity, we have around 10,000 connectors, deep connectors that can connect to any application or any kind of legacy apps in your company. On top of this sits what we call Workato Orchestrate. That enables you in a low-code, no-code manner to orchestrate all your workflows across, whether it be simple or complex, across your entire business. Then sitting on top of this are agents. And so you can build agents, custom agents, trusted agents, I would say, because it has a lot of security and governance elements as a part of it, which is able to orchestrate all these various business processes throughout your system. And then the final layer on top is what we call agentic applications. These are pre-built apps for IT, sales, customer support, etc., that you can just come in, configure, and get up and running in a matter of weeks.
And that brings, I guess, this is probably in the name, Workato One, it brings one point of contact. So instead of talking to 50 different things, you talk to one thing, and it solves for that
Agents
messiness.
has all of that
there.
So think of this as the data layer or the connectivity layer being the enterprise context. So it has all the context. It's able to take action, orchestrate workflows across all of those systems. So agents that you build are just enables that.
Tell us a little bit, I love these kind of conversations, trying to bring them into the real world. Have you talked to folks who have been able to deploy this, who have been able to test this? How does it change their life? How does it make their lives better?
And I think that's the most energizing part of at least my job, is talking to customers. In fact, just earlier today, before coming to this event, I met with one of the major healthcare companies in New York. They are one of our customers. And they are starting to look at, what are the core HR processes or accounting processes like payroll, et cetera, that can be agentified. But what excites me is, some of our customers have deployed this to production, and they're seeing a lot of benefit. I'll give a couple of examples. One is a major e-commerce company.
Yeah.
And what they have done is deployed these agents at the core of their customer support operations. They are seeing tens of millions of dollars in savings per year. And then there is another security company. What they have done is looked at the entire quote-to-cash process, which spans multiple departments, all the way from sales to finance, et cetera.
Yeah.
And they have started investing in those kind of solutions to completely transform that through agents.
And that is, I want to zero in on something you said, tens of millions of dollars of savings. I think when we've talked last year, certainly more than a year ago, a lot of the conversations about AI were theoretical. It sounds like it's real now. It's moving the needle in a material way.
Yeah, and I think that's the promise, right? If you bring those core processes and look at your agents being able to automate those processes,
right,
work through all of that, then the savings and the benefits, the value that you get is significantly more than what you can do on the edges of the enterprise.
So that's a big leap in the last 6 months. Spin this forward again, then. Okay, what's on the horizon for you? What's coming next that's exciting for you?
I don't know how much I can disclose over here.
Just between us, here on stage.
Sure, sure. Okay, yeah, fine. All right, I won't get into the specifics. I'll give you some vague ideas about this. And in fact, we are launching this in a few weeks. That's the reason I cannot get into the details.
Right.
So June 17th is the day we launch this. So think of this, right? All our customers are integrating or looking at connecting all their applications, data, and sources at the layer, at the Workaro One layer. Then their agents are orchestrating all of those business processes end to end. There is one part that is missing, which is how all of these comes together where employees can take advantage of all of these agents to get their work done faster than what they have done before.
Right.
All through agents in the backend. So that's something that
like an agent of agents that sits on top of all of it.
We already have agents of agents.
Yeah.
Agents are able to collaborate. We work with various protocols like MCP, A2A, but this is different.
All right, well then, we'll have to talk again in 6 months. You have to bring an example of that. Before we get the hook, I want to end on one fun thing, one AI thing, as I love to do at these summits. When we spoke last time, your AI thing was one of your children. Your son had built an AI agent to bet on NBA games. So I got to ask, how's that been going for the last 6 months?
Well, my son is in NYU, and we have already know the story as to what happened with Knicks. So we can leave it at that as to how his sports betting went. But what interests me now...
He hasn't retired from school to just do that exclusively.
He's still working, still studying computer science there. But one of the things that excites me is now, his roommate is studying law. So now the two of them have started discussing as to what can the agent be which can help various legal professionals. And so he's ruminating on that idea, working with his roommate to figure out building an agent for that.
All right, well,
so maybe next time.
Stay in touch. We'll bring him and his roommate up on stage
and then
for a
they can talk about
This was an awesome conversation. Buster, great to see you.
Same here.
Thanks for Workado. Stick around. We got Ina Fried coming back with another demonstration. That was great. Thank you.
Here she is again, Ina Fried.
All right, hey everyone. First, a quick words to all the folks downstairs. You're missing out. We got a cool demo up here. We got some fabulous speakers. Plus, we're not breaking out the espresso martinis till later. You're not first in line. All the people up here are gonna get their drinks first. Anyway, so we're gonna shift gears for just a sec for a demo that I think is quick and fun and a little bit scary. One of the fastest moving and most controversial areas that AI is enabling is stuff like voice cloning and, more broadly speaking, deepfakes. I think we've all heard about them, but I'm not sure we've all heard them. So we thought we'd put your ears to the test. In just a minute, you're going to hear 3 very familiar, very New York voices, and your job is to tell which ones are AI and which ones are real. So let's roll the first one.
It was Washington Heights because it's my mom and my friends that live in the Bronx.
All right. So what I want you to do is, if you think that was real Cardi B, raise your hand. If you think that's AI Cardi B, keep it down. So who thinks that was real Cardi B? Oh, I see a few hands, and they're the few that were right. That was really Cardi B. All right, you got 2 more chances to redeem yourself. So let's see the second one.
First of all, it's important to note that Democrats, oftentimes when we lose elections, we think that we lost people to Trump.
All right, so was that AOC or was that AI AOC? If you think that was real AOC, raise your hand. Oh, not very many hands. You're right. That was AI AOC. And that's a mouthful to say. All right, we got 1 more. Let's see how you do.
I know you think people are going to be interested in this, but they're not.
Yeah, tell me about it, Jerry. All right, so was that real Jerry Seinfeld or AI Jerry Seinfeld? If you think that was real Jerry Seinfeld, raise your hand. Ooh, you guys are good. That was AI Jerry Seinfeld. Now, this is fun, and I enjoyed that. It was really fun setting it up, but I think it really does highlight, and we'll get into this some more in the closing sessions, we've reached an age where it is really hard to tell. And that means that anyone can clone a famous person, but it also means you got to warn your older relatives that that phone call really isn't their grandkid. There's a lot to pay attention to in this space. All right, I'll be back in a few minutes. On with the show.
Welcoming back Hope King.
Thank you. Good job. Smart room. Most of you passed that one. So supply chains are sexy again. I mean, really, truly, and super important. And so my next conversation is not about just your usual supply chain, but really about the software supply chain. And in an era where code is generated at lightning speed, this is really the topic that we want to get into deeply because we want to make sure we know how we're securing every single level of that chain. So please welcome to the stage Danny Allen. He's the Chief Technology Officer of Snyk. Yeah.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So, as every company, okay, inevitably becomes an AI company, or at least an AI-powered company, what security blind spots are developers and product teams most commonly overlooking, especially when it comes to code, dependencies, or infrastructure?
So I think part of the answer is actually in the question, which is the blind spot itself. Most organizations, when they're rushing into a new technology era, they don't actually have the visibility of what is happening. We actually just did a survey recently of chief information security officers, and 20% of them said their biggest security threat was coming from AI, and they had no capacity to understand what was happening. So I would say lack of visibility, false assumptions. Actually, it's interesting, we did a survey of developers, and we asked the developers, we said, do you think the code that is being generated is more secure or less secure than what you write by hand?
Okay.
And 75% of them said that the AI code was more secure. Now, do you think it is?
No, we just tested everybody in the room. We could, at least for now, spot it, right?
Yeah, and it makes sense because what they're doing is training on all this open source permissive code, right? So you get the exact average in terms of vulnerabilities over what is out there. So I would say lack of visibility, I would say false expectations of what is secure and not secure, and lastly, just poor policy enforcement. Most organizations don't have the controls in place.
Well, let's talk more about policy and governance, AI governance. So we talked about AI's ability to accelerate software development like never before. It feels like we're building now faster than we can secure because of AI, but at the same time, we know policy traditionally lags innovation. So is there a way to actually bring those timelines closer together?
I think there is. One thing is very true. The speed of code is incredible. We've been talking for a long time, software is eating the world. Well, AI is eating the software. The speed and velocity that software is coming through the pipelines is like nothing I have ever seen in my career right now. It's so fast. And the trouble that CISOs have is they don't have the trust that what is coming through that pipeline is actually secure. Now, there's a number of things that I think we can do. One is that we can put those teams on the same source of understanding so that they're both reading off the same playbook. They're not doing that today. The second thing is policy as code. I think we can be smarter about saying what is allowed versus what is not allowed.
And trust, I mean, forgive me. I mean, everyone talks about trust. It's kind of become this sort of abstract term, but it is so critical, and that's why everyone is talking about it. So at the code level, share what you think trust actually looks like, what it means, and who's responsible for it.
Well, trust is a nebulous word, and everyone, yes, is talking about trust. Back in the 80s, there was a term used in politics, trust but verify. I think a better way of framing it is trust from verification. And so when we think about trust at Sneak, one of the things that we think about is how can we give visibility to everyone for common understanding, whether it be a chief information security officer, whether it be developer, whether it be platform engineering. So visibility is number one. Number two is prioritization, because just because you know about everything doesn't actually give you the understanding of where you should actually start from prioritization. And then lastly, it's policy. And so you want to have that understanding, but you want to verify it. That's what actually gives the trust.
So is there a way that you're working with clients to do all of this for them?
Yes, we have been clearly focused on this from the very beginning. In fact, if you go back 10 years, Sneak kind of disrupted the industry because everyone was doing DevOps, faster and faster development. And one of the things that we did is we inserted ourselves into the pipeline so that we could do the analysis, the verification, and all of the things that needed to be done. We're taking that same approach in two different ways. One is for AI accelerated code, and I think if you did a poll of the room, I would bet that 80% of the room, their developers, are using coding assistants. And so you want to verify the code coming from that. But also AI native code. We talked earlier, like Aura. That app was amazing, being able to track what children are doing. Those types of AI-based applications also need to be secured.
So the AI Trust platform, this brand new platform, but based on this decade's worth of work, is, tell me if I'm hearing this right, it's solving these two sort of problems, the speed of AI accelerated development, but also the security of native AI applications. And I'm curious, as you're looking to the future too, because this is what you're helping clients do as well. There's been hype around autonomous agents and also self-healing code. So we've got speed of AI accelerating development, we've got native AI applications, but now we've got self-healing code, we've got autonomous agents. How far off is that future?
Well, I think it was Bill Gates that said we always overestimate what will happen in the next 2 years and we underestimate what will happen in the next 10 years. My belief, we're in a hybrid world right now, which is we've been using AI actually within our platform for well over 5 years, generative AI for several years to generate fixes. But culturally, I don't know that the world is ready for completely autonomous. I always say I'm willing to get in a Waymo and say, drive me to the next block. I don't know whether I'm willing to get in a Waymo and say, drive me across the country. My belief is that by 2030, we will have completely self-managing autonomous systems, but we're more than 2 years away from completely agentic models. You're still going to want a human in the loop to verify, because developers are core to the trust that is established. The developers actually have to trust that what they're being provided is also secure.
What other things still need to sort of happen before we get to self-healing, fully autonomous?
Well, first of all, there's regulatory things that will have to happen. One of the conversations that was interesting earlier was with the governor when she was talking about the policies. I think you need consistent policies on what is allowable and what is not allowable. That's one part of it. Secondly, there'll just need to be a confidence that what is being generated is secure. I think it was May Habib who was up here earlier saying, wanted to say it was 2024, not 2025. So those types of willingness to accept that what you're getting is accurate, that will take time. And that's why I say I think we're probably 2 or 3 years away.
So if we fast forward 3 to 4 years, okay, just one more year above that, what does secure software development look like then?
I think secure software development looks very different in the future than what it does today. And the reason I say that, software today is very much built around humans, individuals. They write APIs, they choose languages, they write the code. In the future, I actually imagine that we'll see fewer languages, that there will be coding languages that are optimized for AI coding assistance. APIs, as we know them, will disappear in favor of MCP servers and model context protocols, what it stands for, but ways that agents can talk to one another. You don't need the same deterministic APIs that we have today. So I think it is going to look very different, and rather than being creators of code, I think we'll be composers of code. That's what the software development industry will be based around.
And just finally, stepping back a bit, taking off many, many hats that you wear, how do you think AI is actually impacting all of us on a day-to-day basis?
Well, it's making all of us two things, both more organized and more efficient in what we do. It's giving us all kinds of boosts. I mean, the conversation earlier with Aura about helping us parent our children. I mean, it's helping every single one of us in our daily jobs, certainly helping me. It's also making us more anxious because we have concerns about, is this good for the company? Are the right security guardrails in there? And that's why AI trust and making sure that we have confidence as we adopt the AI is so important, because we can't take the full advantage of technology. We can't take advantage of it unless we actually trust that technology that's being used.
I like that, trust being the antidote to anxiety, which I think we all need that antidote. Danny, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you also to the Sneak team for this really amazing partnership. To the audience, grab a refreshment at the Sneak coffee cart. There are specialty lattes, and I hear that people are already getting into espresso martinis. So I don't know, you guys are jumping ahead of the schedule. Thank you so much, Danny.
Thank you, Hope.
Put your hands together for Axios business editor, Dan Primack.
Hello again. So one of the best ways to understand any sort of technological revolution, and in this case the AI revolution, is to follow the money. And there are a few people who follow it better than Josh Wolf, who is co-founder and managing partner of Lux Capital. Josh, join us. Yeah. So Josh, I want to start kind of geopolitically a little bit. I feel when I talk to anyone involved in AI, whether they be policymakers or venture capitalists like yourselves, I always hear about this race with China, and it's imperative that the US win this race. Is that the right framing? And if so, what does winning look like?
We are in massive competition. It is true. I mean, if you look at 50% of all of the scientists that are being trained right now for AI are coming from China. You look at domestic workforce, I think we're outnumbered 38 to 37% now of Chinese foreign researchers that have come here that are working inside of our companies. Ideally, we have a brain drain like we did during the Cold War with Russian emigres, and before that with Eastern European Jews during World War II. It's better that we got the bomb than Germany did. But winning in the terms of restricting chip access is going to be foolhardy in that necessity is the mother of invention. People are going to invent around it. They're going to develop better algorithms, different chips, different models. And so I think that is a fool's errand that we will not beat them on. I think the way to beat China, so to speak, is by making sure that every single young person here that is in some way, shape, or form in touch with any kind of model, from visual to sound to audio to chatbots, et cetera, are super versed at a very young age and are using it more productively, because that is where the win is going to happen.
When DeepSeek got released earlier this year, you called it a grave national security threat. What was the national security threat, if, as you say, like the tech itself is going to equalize in some way?
Well, some of it was the diffusion of the training of the fact that we're going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars between the physical capex on chips and data centers and clusters of hundreds of thousands H100s, which is not really sustainable in my view. view, and I have a sort of contrary take about what happens there. But in large part, it was just that they came from behind and suddenly had a performative model. There is another issue, which is if that model becomes the model that the rest of the world is using, it will approach an asymptote of truth, but never really get close to it. So if you search for Uyghurs or Tiananmen Square today being the anniversary thereof, you will never find that kind of stuff because it is censored. And so I've had these debates with some of the folks. Vinod and I were both in the White House with Jake Sullivan talking about open source versus closed source. Where you stand on the issue depends on where you sit in the cap table. We were very early in Hugging Face and believe in open source and the sort of nature of conjecture and hypothesis and criticism and correction. He was early in OpenAI and believes deeply that a single
Did
cluster...
Jake Sullivan take a side between you and Vinod?
He was most interested really in the geopolitical implications, to say what happens with Saudi and UAE and the location or co-location of data centers there and their investments overseas and things like that. But I think he was swayed by both of us that one view for what's better for national security.
Well, I'm curious on the DeepSeek question. Where is your mind now? Now we are like 3 or 4 months later. And if you were an investor in some of the big US LLM companies, would you still be worried about that? Because you say the quantums of capital are extraordinary that are going into this.
My biggest concern in being worried about the global competition is that other countries are using or developing on top of that. So wrappers and other things that they might develop are based on Chinese models instead of our models, because I believe that the models that we have, particularly open source ones, will be closer to the truth. And that to me is important for scientific development, geopolitical analysis, culture, just far better than having Chinese models.
When it comes to quantum capital, you were saying you told me downstairs, we were talking a little bit about data centers and data center build outs. Do you think we are building out too much? Because the talk is usually we're not building out enough, and every time there's a new data center gets announced, people get very excited about it. We spending too much on this?
Well, in aggregate, yes. I always try to understand what's the consensus view and what's the variant perception. The consensus view is that we need hundreds of thousands of H100 clusters. Jensen and NVIDIA would like you to believe that. You definitely do need it early for training. Whether you need it or not for inference is another story. And that what any one individual company does is rational, but collectively becomes irrational. So all the hyperscalers from Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Salesforce, Oracle, et cetera, all building this out, it will not necessarily persist. And one take that is related to that is the demands for energy, which is presumed that because you need all these data centers, then you need small modular reactors, and so you're getting speculative capital that's going into the energy provision therein. So I think that whole thing is going to end in disaster, mostly because, as cliched as it is, history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. And if you look through history, you had Global Crossing with the layout of fiber to optic and dark optical networking that got laid and lit. The beneficiaries of the third world that got connected to the internet, not the people that were the early investors, and frankly, the distressed guys who came in post facto and picked up these assets for cents on the dollar. Same thing when you went from servers that were on-prem to colo to cloud, and I think that you're going to have the same phenomenon now.
So are you so is Lux not investing in things like that?
Not
say, for example, the mini reactors, for example?
No, I am a huge nuclear bull, and I've tried to rebrand nuclear energy, as you know, elemental energy, and I applaud all the people that are doing it, but I'm just a little bit speculative. Certainly on fusion, forget about it for me, but on small modular fission does not make a lot of sense. The thing that I think is interesting
doesn't make a lot of sense because you don't think it will work the way that people are hoping it will work, or because you don't think even if it did that the demand isn't there.
I think if I was building out large data centers under the belief that there's going to be persistent demand for the next decade, I would be doing it in and around the Permian Basin and figuring out natural gas and how do you get distribution of energy, number one. Number two, I would be building large 1,000 megawatt or gigawatt power plants, not small 150 modular megawatt plants. And we have a history of doing that, but there's a psychological and political overlay to that. And you're in this catch-22 between the NRC, even though the Trump administration has been super positive on small modular nukes, a lot of that is favoritism and paying back stuff, and I'm just not that bullish. What I am bullish on is another sort of contrarian take, which is if you don't believe that inference has to go to these large data centers, then where is it going to occur? And I actually believe that people have misread or maybe overlooked. There was a paper that Apple put out maybe a year and a quarter ago about models on device using memory. And so back in 2015, 2016, we had funded a company called Zoox, which had a pretty good outcome, sold to Amazon, became the center of their self-driving cars. It was then that I saw NVIDIA, when it was a $15 billion market cap that then became what it was, as the soul of the new machine for AI, because people back then thought it's just PS5 and Xbox generative image chips. Today, I feel the same way about the memory players. 50% of your inference, I believe, will be on device, meaning your cached emails, chats, phone calls, videos, health data, et cetera, will all basically be processed on device, but it won't be GPUs that are on device. If you think about SK Hynix, Micron, and Samsung as the three major memory players, SK Hynix in particular, usually coupled high bandwidth memory to the GPU chips, but I think that increasingly you're going to see them on phones, on device, doing 50% of your inference, with the other 50% going for Claude, Perplexity, ChatGPT, whatever in the cloud.
Does that mean as a VC, it's funny, I'm going to date myself and probably get the dates wrong, but I feel about a decade ago, there was a boom of memory chip startups, and most of them ultimately failed. They kind of got to that later stage venture world and then got murdered. They were kind of the early unicorns to die. Are you seeing, do you see a next generation of those coming to challenge Hynix, Sony, et cetera?
Yes, whether intelligent or not, we are making a bunch of investments around sort of edge inference that are on-device small models and memory-driven.
Another thing you guys are doing a lot of investing in is defense tech. You're obviously an investor in Enduro, but a bunch of other things. Venture capitalists in the last 5 months have been flooding into defense tech, a lot of which is, obviously, there's AI as a piece of that. Is the flooding in just because it's become trendy? Is it because they think there's about to become an enormous amount of spending because of Trump's Golden Dome? Why have venture capitalists who avoided this for most of the history of venture capital now running in?
Some of it is people following success. So, Peter Thiel and I were 2018 or 2019, Reagan National Defense Forum. Palmer was there in his iconic Hawaiian shirt, cargo pants, flip-flops. Everybody thought he was like a laughing joke, amongst the 5 stars and whatever, but he was a very serious guy. They're passing around pictures of him in his cosplay costumes or whatever. And it followed that classic Gandhi thing of like, first they laugh at you, and then they fight you, and then they join you, and then you win. And that's what happened. My guess would be 1% to 2% of the people that were actually there at that Reagan National Defense Forum in California have since applied for a job at Anduril. It has become successful, not just in valuation, but in actual performance. You have a $2 billion plus top line. There was about $8.5 billion of demand for a $2.5 billion round that just closed at a $28.5 billion pre. And it's a very serious company. And
do you think that valuation would have been significantly lower if Biden or if Harris was in the White House?
No, zero effect of the sort of broader, political or domestic political climate. They have done well under both Biden and under Trump, and I believe that when you just look at the model of funding the R&D and the development and the production of products, not as a cost plus 5-6% contract, but of actually like out of our equity dollars and everybody else's equity dollars to build this, and a war fighter that says I want that, and winning programs of record is just a step change from what the Lockheeds, Raytheons, Boeings, et cetera, have done. So they will be the next prime, and I think that they'll trade at a multiple that reflects the growth rates, the margins that are distinct from the traditional defense players. I will say, by the way, part of Palantir's ascension, and Karp is a friend, is some of his vibe in the current zeitgeist of sort of anti-woke and speaking to that, but it's also, they've done extraordinarily well as a company, but it's also investor demand when there is a paucity or scarcity of pure play defense companies. And so I think that there is this early signal that there is a lot of pent-up demand for that. I will also say that there is absolutely going to be a bubble in aerospace and defense. And that bubble will be driven by pools of capital formed in part because you have, to your point, why are GPs suddenly excited about this? In part because you have success stories that people are following. By the way, not every company is going to end up like Anduril. Most of them are going to be somewhere between frauds and like just failed companies. And there will be 1 or 2 or 3 companies that are big. We're in Anduril, Saildrone, Hadrian, Varda, Impulse, et cetera, that I think are going to be winners, but there's going to be a long tail of companies that are just shitty or frauds. You have LPs, though, that are doing a very interesting calculus. Historically, they would say, well, we do ESG, or we do DEI investing, or we are comfortable with defense or dual use, but we're not comfortable with offense. Anduril was the first time that we had to make a choice as a partnership to say, are you comfortable being involved in a kill chain? And are you comfortable with the moral decision of that, which for me was one that said, yes.
And certain LPs say we can't be a piece of this.
Now you're seeing that defense is actually part of ESG. Now, I looked at that back then 7 years ago when we first...
It's a little self-serving, but yes.
No, but here's the why. Here's why. If you are making a discriminating choice looking at drone surveillance footage of a guy with an AK-47 going to shoot up a school of girls and a guy with a pickaxe that's coming home from a mine to feed his family, that's a discrimination that you want to be able to make. My view of it is, are you reducing human suffering? And if you have weapons... In a world where there are bad people willing to do bad things against good people, you want good people with better technology that are willing to do bad things, as Palmer would say, to commit violence in the name of some of the things that we value. And historically, people were not comfortable with that. What happens next is LPs that were like, no, we won't fund that, either as a direct company or a venture fund that is doing that. They are comfortable saying we will invest in a fund of funds that invest in that. So you're 2 moral layers removed, which suddenly makes it acceptable, which means that you're going to have pools of capital that are formed to serve that demand, and you're going to end up with too much money chasing too few good companies, and you will get a bubble.
Something you said at the beginning of this when we were talking about China and the U.S., you were talking about, you talked a little bit about students and go back at this point 100 years to immigration. I think of the stuff you invest in a lot of deep tech, and so much of it comes from basic R&D that comes either out of universities or academia or other sorts of things. Where's your head at right now with what we have seen, not just the NIH grants, the halting of foreign student interviews for student visas? Are we basically cutting off our own nose to spite our face right now?
There are a lot of cell phones that are happening, and it's not just this administration. It's been happening for 20 of the last 22 years, cutting federal funding for NIH, NSF, et cetera. I literally was 20 years ago when Newt Gingrich was actually calling for a tripling of the NSF budget, which was like unheard of for a Republican to do. But he understood the primacy of American science that can attract the best and the brightest around the world to come here, develop here, stay here, and for that science, which sometimes takes 5, 10 years and amounts to nothing, and then there's some ancillary offshoot of it that becomes the next great company. You look at so many of our publicly traded companies that came from academic derived science, from Genentech with Conan Boyer out of the UC system to Google itself. It's absolutely critical. Probably 10 or 15% of our portfolio are things that are totally derived from university-funded research. And we recently launched a new $100 million initiative within one of our existing funds.
This is 1-800-Scientist.
Yeah, it was basically a science helpline because we were getting inundated from friends and peers. And then we said, let's open this up to the country where people are seeing grant cuts. There's politicization on academic campuses where researchers that have nothing to do with some of the stuff, whether it's fighting anti-Semitism or just dealing with administrative stuff that they are being victims of. And these are people that are doing cancer research, people that are developing cutting-edge new materials. There's national security implications. There's neuroscience researchers that unfortunately had something like neurotransmitter in their grant name, and because the word trans was in neurotransmitter, it was part of a search and they were getting cut. So there's crazy stuff like that the sort of sledgehammer approach, as opposed to a surgical approach, is hurting American science. And we said, let's step in, and if we might normally do de novo companies where we start companies from scratch with a scientist, and they're 90% mature, and we're taking 10% science risk, now we'll take 50% science risk, and we'll say, bring your work here, or maybe we can license it or acquire it, or do a sponsored research from one of our existing companies.
I'm curious, I think, tell me I'm wrong about this, that you, at least in the past, have been friendly with Scott Bessent. Have you raised this with him, that the White House is kind of seems to be doing an economic or scientific stuff?
I have not talked to Scott about this issue. Scott, I think, is one of the great adults in the room. I will say Scott is a student not only of markets and securities and currencies, but also of human nature. And he understands who he works for and his boss. And I don't think that he will do something that upsets the apple cart in a way. And frankly, I don't think any of us want him to, because we want him in that job.
Final question for you, and you have 1 minute to answer what is a very simple question.
I'm going to speak really slowly for this one.
So there seems to be a fissure, and this is even within venture capitalists, but it's even within folks in AI, which is AI optimism and AI doomerism. I'm assuming you're somewhere in the middle of that, but which side are you more on in terms of the future, really the future for all of us?
I am so optimistic just about the human condition continuing to evolve. I mean, there are situations that I've heard just anecdotally of people that went to doctors and they couldn't get a diagnosis, and then they took all their medical records and put it into O3 and suddenly got a differential diagnosis that was like more valuable. So I think that it will be used for enormous good. I've got 3 kids, and I grew up playing copious amounts of video games and watching a shit ton of TV, and I want them using every AI tool and being versed, because that's where the competitive advantage is going to come.
Do you worry that when they're in their 20s that there aren't going to be white-collar jobs for them?
I believe that so I always like to look at things in the abundance for scarcity lens. What is abundant, not valuable? What's scarce, valuable? What is going to become increasingly scarce is human-to-human interaction, the care part of healthcare. I will get an amazing diagnosis, but I still, because I am human, because I still want a hug and want to hold hands and want to cuddle with my wife, all those kinds of things, AI cannot replace, and so the human aspect of it will become increasingly valuable. I had dinner with Dario at Anthropic, and he was saying much the same thing. Blue-collar jobs are going to be safe. Plumbers are going to be safe. People that are doing Broadway plays are going to be unsafe. We were talking to Joseph Gordon-Levitt about the nature of Hollywood and its evolution. We are huge investors in Runway ML, and I believe in them and the moral direction of them democratizing access to all of us to express our creativity. I can't draw for shit. I can't make a movie, but I can use prompts to express my creativity in ways that I never could, and that's a beautiful thing. At the same time, I value the primacy of the human that is performing on a stage and the artistic nature of that. So I would say on the whole, I am wildly bullish, but not ebullient with the ignorance of the things that get lost and fall apart.
That's a good segue, because we have both Joseph and Runway later. So Josh, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Welcoming back, Ina Fried.
Well, as you heard, it's a tough time these days to be a neurotransmitter. Anyway, you've reached the final, really fun part of the show. Our next demo explores something that many assume that AI lacks: emotional intelligence. Chris Gagne leads research at Hume AI, a startup that's developing models that are good at sensing human emotion and intent, and even trying to project a little of their own. So please help me welcome Chris to show us how the technology works. Chris.
How's it going?
I'm going to stand over here. Or I think we're sitting. That's right. So yeah, I mean, help set the stage for what we're going to see. You know, why emotional intelligence out of a computer? Why do we even want that?
Yeah, so I think, well, let me just start by saying what Hume is. So we're a company that's really focused on optimizing for human well-being. And so part of that is having emotional intelligence and understanding the emotions we're expressing. So today we're going to see EV3, which is our new speech language model, which is like a voice version of ChatGPT, but it's really optimized to understand human emotion and express it.
Well, as my old journalism professor Hugh Morgan said, show don't tell. So let's have a look.
Cool.
Hey there! Welcome. So glad you could make it. I'm EV3, and I'm here to help you with your questions or anything you need. What can I do for you today?
Hey, Evie. So we're at the Axios AI Summit in New York. Can you say hi to the audience?
Oh, hello. Wow, the Axios AI Summit in New York? That sounds absolutely fantastic. I'm so excited for you. How's the energy there? So,
It's really great, but actually I'm feeling a bit nervous right now. Can you give me some tips to stay calm on stage?
Oh, nerves are totally normal before a big stage moment. It just means you care, right? So here's a little trick. Before you go on, take 3 really deep breaths. Imagine you're drawing strength from the very ground beneath your feet. And remember...
I think that helped. But you know what? I need you to whisper and stay quiet because I don't want the audience to hear us.
Oh, okay. I understand. Your comfort is key here. I'll keep my voice down. So, tell me...
Thanks, Evie. I think Ina has a question for you, actually.
So, hi, Evie. I have a question for you. So we're here in the Altman building in New York. Is that named for OpenAI CEO Sam Altman?
Oh, the Axios AI Summit in New York. That's quite a gathering. So, about that name, the Altman building is actually named after Benjamin Altman, who founded B. Altman and Company, one of New York's most successful department stores back in the 19th century. It was originally built in 1896 as a carriage house by architects Kimball and Thompson. In this really
Thanks,
lovely...
Evie. We're short on time, so why don't you say goodbye to the audience?
Okay, absolutely. Well, thank you all for tuning in and being part of this conversation today. It's been a real pleasure. I truly hope you all have an inspiring rest of your time in New York.
Thanks, Evie.
So a couple of questions come to mind. First, I noticed, the voice is a very specific voice. It's a woman, sounds like possibly of Indian descent. How do you decide what voice to use, what voices are available?
Yeah, so this voice we actually created last week. So all of our voices actually we can create with a prompt. And this is one of the new things we were doing with this new release. So text prompt, you can create any voice you want. There are thousands of voices that people have already created. This one we thought was particularly fun and interesting to talk to.
So I understand, and I think it's not that controversial to say it would be great if AI really understood emotions, understands when you're nervous, when you're frustrated. That seems like the kind of thing I think, do most of us want the AI to understand when we're frustrated, sense our moods? But the area that I think is way more controversial is, to what degree do we want our AI to express as if it's having emotions? Because let's be clear, Evie doesn't have feelings, doesn't have emotions, but it's projecting. She said she was excited to be here. There are a few different times that she was expressing emotion. Even now, I'm using she, but AI doesn't have, I support everyone identifying however they want, but computers are computers.
Yeah.
What's the calculus that you guys go through in terms of deciding how much should an AI project as if it has emotions? What should be the guardrails around that?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question. And I think it's also important to distinguish that the AI doesn't feel the same way we feel, but it can, we can give it the ability to understand emotion. And those are quite different things. But I think something that's really important for us is that people talking to our AI know that they're talking to an AI. So this is sort of a guideline and a rule that we actually give to developers that build on this technology. So that's important, but I think there are a lot of use cases where we actually want it to sound very emotionally expressive. So for instance, if I'm feeling sad, I want it to sound sympathetic so that I know it's registered that emotion, and so that we're going to deal with that situation together. It's just an easy way for it to communicate in the same way that we communicate with each other.
And who's using this right now? Is it, you guys build the underlying technology, but you're not directly providing it to the world?
So a lot of use cases across like telemedicine, customer service, digital education, therapy, a lot of different use cases like that.
What else should people know about the field? What have you learned in building EV that you wish the rest of the AI field understood?
Yeah, I think we have a long way to go, but it's really important that we start now thinking about how to align, especially with emotional intelligence, how we align those capabilities with what we ultimately want. So as we talk to Evie and as it's guiding us through our conversations, we want it to be thinking about what our ultimate goals are, how to make us live a fulfilling life, and I think these are some of the questions that are important to think about now.
Well, Chris, thank you. Thank you, Evie, and thank you, Chris.
Yeah,
Chris
thanks for having
Gagne.
me.
Thanks a lot. So I'm really excited about our next speaker. I've actually known him for quite a while, and AI is clearly reshaping the creative process. We've seen it in so many ways. From we opened the day talking to Jeffrey Katzenberg, we saw what Google's cooking up. I think we're seeing it every day. AI can do more and more things. And one of the big questions is, what do we want AI to do? What do we want people to do? And how do we recognize and account for the fact that some of what AI is doing, it's doing based on what humans have done before? And I can't think of anyone better to have this discussion with than Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Please welcome Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Oh,
good to see you.
Good to see you. Hey, everybody.
So we both have a couple areas that are passionate to both of us. Some of you know I was a kid actor. I gave that up for the lucrative field of journalism. We're both passionate.
I'm still a kid actor.
We're both passionate about technology. You've been working at the intersection of technology for quite a while. I mean, I Hit Record came out a long time ago.
Yep.
So it's fair to say you're not a technophobe. You're not afraid of technology.
Love technology.
At the same time, you have some real concerns about where AI seems to be headed.
Yeah.
Talk about what excites you and what worries you.
Oh, wow. Well, like you said, with Hit Record, I was always really excited about sort of where technology and creativity can intersect. And throughout history, new technology has always challenged artists and inspired artists to do new great things and sort of defined how people can express themselves. I'm a big believer in that old adage, the medium is the message, the old Marshall McLuhan or Neil Postman saying that you can try to divorce what you're saying and the technology you're using to say it, but in fact, they intertwine and they impact each other kind of irrevocably. And I absolutely believe in the potential for this new technology that's arriving to enhance creativity, to allow people to do amazing creative things that they've never done before. But I also think that if we go down the path of least resistance and we just do sort of the default thing, that the downsides might outweigh the upsides when it comes to human creativity.
And so, I mean, to really set the stage, and I think we've seen it through some of the conversation, but I mean, basically AI has gotten so good that it's possible, and this is both the good and the bad, it's possible if you have one piece of the idea, you have a script, you can make a movie without any other humans. Mm-hmm. If you are a cinematographer, you can use virtual actors.
Sure.
So some of that sounds really exciting.
You know what it reminds me of is when I was a little kid, we would make movies, with, at that time, my family's like...
Giant camcorder.
Yeah,
I had one.
Camcorder. And I remember this thing we used to say, where we would shoot something, and it would be kind of not quite right, and we'd have this sort of fantasy of, like, well, my dad knows how to edit, I think, so my dad will fix it later. Let's just keep going. So now people are going to actually really have that figure in their lives where like a 10-year-old can be making a movie and having a great time and be like, oh, well, I really wanted it more to look like this. And then it can. That's great. Like, I think that can be wonderful. At the same time, and I say this as a parent, with kids who are creative, and I love getting in the weeds of their creative process. If you do it for them too much, you can watch it sap their energy and their creativity. Like, I'll give you an example. My kid loves to make music with a computer, but I don't let him use the Apple loops, the thing where you can just be like, oh, Apple, make a hip hop beat for me or make a rock beat for me, and it just does it. I don't let him use those tools. I say, like, no, you can make a rock beat, you can make a hip hop beat. And the reason why is because then what's the point of it just doing it for him? The joy, and also, by the way, the muscle building of making a beat comes from doing it. So I think there's a delicate balance to strike between letting the technology do it for you and, using your own muscles to be creative.
So one piece is how much labor are we putting in, how much of it is the thing. Mm-hmm. But then there's another piece that's super important to you as an actor, which is how much of other human endeavors went into the technology. Yes. One of the reasons that Google tool that we saw is so good at making movies, they won't tell us exactly what it's been trained on, but it's been trained on a lot of movies that were made.
Yes.
It might have been your movie. If they went back far enough, it might have been my movie.
Yeah.
It was lots of people's movies.
Or anything that anybody just happened to upload to YouTube or whatever. Yeah.
And no consent, no compensation.
Yes.
Those are phrases we hear a lot. Why is it important? Mm-hmm. Besides, again, you wanting to get nice residuals so that you don't have to come do.
Yeah, sure. So, look, on the one hand, I'd love to be like a pure punk rock artist and be like, art isn't about the money. I'm going to do it anyway. You don't need to pay me. And there's something kind of beautiful about that. But on the other hand, what really happens if you don't pay artists is not a punk rock thing. What happens is all the biggest corporate giants just own everything and control everything. And I think if you need to adhere to the basic principle that when humans contribute something, when humans create something, when humans have an idea or they do anything that then makes money, there's economic value in that. Because if you take this to the extreme and you go along with the principle that, like, oh no, the data that we're using to train these AI models, the humans that produce that data, they own 0% of the economic value, and we tech companies, we should own 100% of the economic value. Where does that lead in the future? In the future, you get to a place where humans don't have any economic incentive to strive, to be excellent, to be creative, to have ideas, especially as the technology proliferates more and more throughout our economy. It's actually much bigger than just entertainment and content creation.
And I want to point out, we're pretty close to that reality. We are like, it's 11:59 on the clock. Basically, right now there's no mechanism in most AI mediums for the artists to give consent or be compensated. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of lawsuits going through the courts. Yep. I've heard a lot of people say it's a coin flip.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, in the most recent call for proposals on how we should handle AI, a bunch of these tech companies have asked for explicit permission, explicitly guaranteed in law, that they can train on whatever they want. Similar discussion happening in the UK. How important is it that people get involved in this conversation?
This is where I would want to really broaden it out to beyond art and entertainment. I know I come from Hollywood, and I understand why people might say, like, well, Hollywood, actors, I don't know, do we really have to worry about them? But this same dynamic, this same technology of, hey, let's take data produced by humans, feed it into these models, and monetize it, that's going to replace so many jobs. And if we go by the principle that all those humans that produced all that data don't deserve any of the economic value, what's that going to mean for the whole economy? I mean, and this is frankly how a lot of the leaders in the AI world talk about it. They talk about, we are building a technology that will produce all of the economic value, and humans will no longer produce any economic value, so we'll put them on UBI. We'll put them on a centralized dole. And it strikes me as so ironic because these folks are like, they're enthusiastic capitalists. And now they're advocating that the economy work basically the way that, Stalinist USSR worked, where humans have this sort of flat thing with no incentive to excel or stand out or do anything, with any ingenuity, because human contributions have no economic value, and they just get a UBI? Like, that doesn't sound like a beautiful world or like a good economy or a good, life for humanity to me.
And so I want to dive into two of the points you made. One is that this isn't really just about actors or Hollywood or creators in general, that the technology exists today that you can take what you contributed to one film that you got paid well for, but you can use that to make infinite films. We don't need, in fact, you'd be just as young and beautiful today. We can make 50 years worth of films, but under the current system, maybe not pay you for any of that. But that same principle really applies to so much of the workforce, that especially as the technology of capturing that data gets better and better, you might work at a job, you might be a great salesperson. They spend a year watching what makes you a great salesperson, and then they're like, great, the sales AI has gotten really good, bye. And so it isn't just Hollywood. And in fact, Hollywood, it's most visible. You have one of the loudest megaphones and one of the strongest unions, and it's still happening to you all.
It certainly is. And I don't know if Hollywood is going to be able to get its act together and try to demand better terms. I mean, the truth is all the stuff was already stolen. And the big tech companies are now coming and asking for forgiveness, having done it. And it's just moving so fast, and the technology is honestly so impressive that I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of get away with that gambit. I hate to be a pessimist, but I do agree with you. I don't think it bodes well, and I don't know, maybe it'll take some kind of really noticeable and drastic impact on the larger workforce for people to start sitting up and saying like, oh wait, we can't descend into this new feudalism where all the economic value is captured by these, few big tech companies.
So I'm going to posit that not only is Hollywood emblematic of the problem, but also within the professional arts might also be part of the solution. It's interesting. I was talking to Jeffrey Katzenberg this morning and suggesting, so maybe we're kind of in the Napster moment before we had something like the iTunes store. It took Napster distributing it for free for the industry to rethink, well, what they really value isn't necessarily the free. I mean, everyone loves getting things for free, but what they valued was being able to get any song whenever you want, and that some segment of the population is significant is willing to pay for it. And it's evolved since. It's gone from paid downloads to subscription music. Hasn't been great for the artists, but it has had a model. And there's a model in the music industry where the person who wrote the song gets paid. Anyone can cover it, but the person who wrote it still gets paid. The owner of the music gets paid. The singer gets paid.
There are systems to distribute those payments.
Similarly, you film a movie, there's tons of people involved, and somehow we manage to compensate all of them. Do you have some hope that something like that could exist, and what do you think it takes to bring that about?
There would have to be enough pressure to make that happen. There's certainly not a business incentive. It only costs the big businesses money to pay the people whose value they're monetizing. They will need to be made to do that. But I completely agree with you. I mean, you mentioned this new video generation model from Google, Veo, right? Veo3. I mean, probably, they won't say, but probably that's trained on a bunch of people's YouTube videos. They probably could build some system. They're already compensating lots of YouTubers who are uploading their videos, and they're compensating the various musicians who aren't even on the same account. But if someone uses a video, the system can sense it. If someone's video uses a piece of music, the system can sense it and be like, oh, we need to compensate this musician.
And it took lawsuits to get there.
And it did. That's exactly right.
The music labels suing YouTube. Oh, suddenly they have a technology. Suddenly they can compensate. And it's interesting. We have seen glimmers of this. So in the stock photo world, there's a lot of image generation engines out there that don't compensate the artists. But Adobe, with Firefly, if you contribute to Adobe stock, you also get contributed to how much it helps their Firefly image creators. So it does seem like it can be done. Well, it takes pressure, it takes a demand, it takes a requirement.
So, and if I could, let's just try to paint two hypothetical pictures of what YouTube looks like in the future, all right? In one future, if you take what we've seen with VO3 and you take that down the road a little bit, now you've got a video generation tool that can be hooked up to an optimizer, a machine learning algorithm that can optimize for any key performance indicator, any metric they want to optimize for, probably ad revenue in the end, right? This is what YouTube already does, but the way that YouTube does it is it has a finite set of videos in its database, and the machine learning algorithm statistically calculates which video is the one to serve next that's most likely to optimize for ad revenue. Take that now, VO3. It's not looking at a finite number of videos deciding what it's going to serve. Now it can just generate anything. And it can tune what it serves you to its optimizer for ad revenue. And all the things we've seen happen with social media and YouTube and TikTok, et cetera, all the extremism, all the damaging side effects we've seen from hooking media up to an optimizer, it becomes that like crazy, right? Now, and by the way, all the economic value belongs to this optimizer, these sort of just AI-generated videos, because we're saying that the humans whose data went into this video don't deserve anything.
So I just want to make sure the audience is getting this, because it's a super important point. So basically, in the historic YouTube world, they still had an algorithm that said, you watch this video. We think the next best way to keep you watching is to show this video and then that video.
Yeah.
They were all videos made by real human beings, but the algorithm was really helping maximize attention. Facebook works exactly the same way.
YouTube pays the humans and Facebook doesn't, right?
Facebook also, that feed is things they know will keep your attention. Now, and Facebook has explicitly said this is the world they want to create. Today, if you go to Facebook, you're much less likely to see your friends' posts. You're much more likely now to see a post the algorithm knows you'll like. And to be honest, they got me pegged. They show me Lego videos. They show me things that make me happy. Genuinely do enjoy the experience, even though I wish I was seeing my friends. But where they said they're going next, and they've already started this, is content that's created just for me. And to your point, they're going to have an infinite supply of that.
Yep.
And so suddenly, it's kind of Ready Player One, right?
Yes. And where you get is pretty dystopian. You get people hooked up to these bliss machines that are so addictive, they just scroll and scroll and scroll, and there's no incentive now to participate or be creative because you're just getting the perfect thing fed to you over and over again. But now, consider an alternative where YouTube, it can generate these videos, but it's compensating the people whose data was used to make these videos. Now,
aren't we still just hooked up to the bliss machine? You're just getting
but there's an incentive for you to make a video because there's an economic incentive that you could get paid if you make a good video that helps to train the videos that people like. To me, it feels different if you've set up a market dynamic, an incentive for people to be creative, versus the world where there is no such incentive because we've gone and said that humans don't generate economic value anymore.
So I want to bring it back to what we can do now.
Yeah.
The government is trying to decide this right now. The Trump administration put out a call for comments.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, the tech companies said, we want all the data.
Yeah.
A bunch of artists said no. I don't think it's a terribly good sign that the head of the Copyright Office was forced out. Would you agree?
The head of the Copyright Office issued like a 100-page report saying I don't think probably most of this is fair use. Yeah, and then the next day they were removed from office, right?
So I don't know about you. I'd encourage you read this report from the Copyright Office. It was the head of the Copyright Office's last act was to put out this, and it's a nuanced position. It doesn't say nothing is free use.
Right.
It just doesn't say everything is free use.
And I agree with that, by the way. No one should own the English language, for example. So if data that was used to teach these models to use English in a natural way, I'm not necessarily saying that people should be paid. I think you can find a reasonable structure to figure out what's fair and where humans should be paid and where the tech companies should be making money. I'm not against the tech companies. I think it's actually great what they are doing, and there is a bright future if we can set up the right systems and the right incentives.
So you may not know this, the audience does. I have a magic wand that I sometimes give to guests and let them create the world they want.
Oh, I see.
I gave it to Governor Hochul this morning, but I managed to get it back in exchange for some blue cheese dressing.
Wow, sweet.
So I'm going to give you, for the last minute, you have the magic wand.
Yeah.
How do we get to the world that you pointed to that's better and avoid the world that's not?
I mean, let's stick with the specific example we just had. A gargantuan force like YouTube, if they set the example and said, hey, we want to be a platform where there still is an incentive for all these awesome creators who have made our platform what it is for the last 2 decades to keep creating. And yes, we're going to use videos to train AI-generated, AI models that will generate videos, but we're going to track whose contributions went into that training data, and we're going to make this a place where human creativity is still valued. If Google would step up and do that, maybe others would follow suit.
Well, I think you all get a sense for why I was so eager to have Joseph Gordon-Levitt join us. Ladies and gentlemen, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Good to see you. Thanks, everybody.
All right, I promise espresso martinis aren't very far away, but you're going to want to hear this last discussion. To close out our program, we turn to a visually stunning side of the AI world, the one that we've been talking about. Now we're going to see it in action again. Chris Valenzuela is the co-founder and CEO of Runway, a company that's pushing the boundaries of what's possible in terms of AI video generation and helping creators bring their ideas to life. Chris, please come on out. Great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
So lots to talk about, but I think, again, to help set the stage, it's sometimes best to see the technology.
Yes.
You picked an unfortunate subject, but it's really fascinating. So if we can roll that video.
Houston, you are go for re-entry.
So we got a sense of where the technology is out, and I have a feeling that's going to be in my nightmares for a while. What I was struck by was, to me, it showed this fascinating moment we're at. So there were moments when I looked at that, and I saw a piece of myself. And there were moments when I looked at that, and I was like, something's off, something's missing. And it's not whether it gets the details right. Something about capturing the soul, getting the essence of a person. And that doesn't have to do with realism. It's something else. Because it can be, you can draw a caricature of someone and really capture them, or you can have something that's pretty close to them but still misses it, which to me is a vast improvement. In the early days, they were all uncanny. Like you'd look at an AI video and it would just feel fake. Where is the technology at right now? What has allowed us to get to this? Where are we as sort of the underlying technology?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. So what you just saw is made with an AI model called Gen 4 that's been around for 2 months. So it's definitely new within the scope of AI land. And I would say we're at a moment in time where realism and definition and speed has gotten really good. We're making something like that takes just a couple minutes. But in no ways is perfect. And you're right. There's some parts of it that can still be improved. But I would say we're reaching a tipping point in terms of what we know can be improved and how to improve it. And very soon you'll have way more ways of creating characters and emotion within the videos themselves in ways that you want them. And I think part of it is there's no one particular thing, I would say. It's not about the data or the video, the models or the architectures. I would say everything is converging towards just improving overall. And for references, this is Gen 4. The first generation of our models, Gen 1, was we released it on 2023, which if you look at it now, it feels like 20 years ago.
For folks who didn't see it, what's different? What does the technology do, aside from being much more high definition, much faster? What couldn't you do originally that you can do now?
Well, first of all, videos were not visible just like a couple of years ago. So we went from it not being something people thought actually AI could do to the point where we were saying, well, actually frame 24, like the intonation is not the right one. So which is a great amount of progress in just a couple of years. And so I would say the idea of video in the first time was a huge stepping stone. And then if you look at video 3 years ago, it was very low res, very random, very uncontrollable, and very like it looks more like an abstract painting more than anything else. And I think a lot of the progress we've tried to do is not only on resolution and quality, but also fidelity and control. Control meaning you as an artist and filmmaker, how do you make sure you have the right thing you're trying to create, which is the most important thing.
And to the point that a couple people made on stage, I mean, ultimately, it's not a piece of technology, it's a vehicle for storytelling.
Yes.
And one of the ways that we can tell that AI storytelling has improved is for the last 2 years, including tomorrow is the second year, you all are running an AI film festival. Talk about some of what we're seeing from creators. And you should all, if you're able, it's tomorrow night.
Yes.
Here in Manhattan.
That's correct. Yeah, so that's actually a great way of seeing progress. We started doing this film festival in New York around 2 years ago. So we're doing our third version right now in the Lincoln Center, which is actually happening tomorrow. There's also a version of it happening in Paris and in LA. And to give you a rough sense of like where things were 2 years ago when we did our first time, we got 300 submissions. So 300 submissions from all over the world. We thought it was amazing. We went into a theater in Chinatown and screened those films. This year we got 6,000 submissions. From all over the world. And the most important thing is, of course, quality has improved. So the models have gotten better, as you can see right now. But also the storytelling aspects of it have gotten to the point where when I saw the films, you start forgetting really how they were made, and you start really falling into the story itself, which is the most interesting part of any story. It's like you like the story because of what it communicates, not because of how it was made. And so I think the celebration that we're doing tomorrow is kind of a reminder of like these are technologies for people, for humans. We're a research company. We're not going to be speaking about research. We're going to be speaking about these artists who have created these amazing stories and films. And it's a great moment to celebrate artists who are experimenting with it.
And so I feel like I'd be remiss if we didn't spend a chunk of time responding to the discussion that Joseph Gordon-Levitt and I just had. How do we build this world where storytellers have new tools without killing an industry that has brought us so many good stories, without saying, all right, thanks actors, you helped train our algorithms, screen makers, filmmakers, all the people who went into it, thanks, appreciate your work, we've democratized it, see you later. How do we not end up in that world?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think part of it has to do with managing expectations. So we work a lot with studios, with a lot of production teams, with filmmakers themselves, with a lot of people in the industry, and I think there's a lot of education has to be done in terms of really helping understand what these models actually do. Because if the expectation is that you're going to go into Runway and type movie, enter, and you're going to get a movie, then you probably are setting the wrong expectations of what the technology does. And so what it does is it helps you achieve a specific goal. And so the most compelling use case of Runway, since we've been working on Runway for 6 years now, early days and still today, is everyone below the line. So editors, VFX artists, writers, people who are day-to-day working with software trying to get something done. And if I can help you do that thing faster, that's great. You're still in control. You are the one who has the vision. But instead of spending your weekends on iterating on a node your director gave you, you can spend a day. And that's amazing. And so the tools that we have are tools that help you and augment you in getting there. They're not going to do the work for you. You're still pretty much in the center of it. So, for example, in the film festival, every year that we host it, there's a common question I get from reporters, which is like, what prompts were used to make the films? And the answer is like, there's no one single prompt you use. I wish it was that easy. That's like going and asking a filmmaker what buttons they press on the camera to make a film, which is like, yeah, you press button, but that's not how you actually make films, you know? And so part of it, I think, is managing expectations and then helping people understand this new thing, because it's a new thing. It's definitely new. It works completely different from anything you've used in the past. So it takes time to adjust.
So there's two things in there. One I want to dive into, but one we didn't address. So the one that's worth diving into is the idea that somehow Hollywood filmmaking is going to be replaced by me just typing a paragraph. You've kind of made the case that's not what it, like, yes, you can make a movie that way. No, you can't make a good movie that way. That, it's really honing the tool, again, just like other things Jeffrey Katzenberg was talking about, that tough transition from hand-painted cell animation to computer graphics. Toy Story is still great, not because it was computer graphics, but because it was a beautifully story well told. That is one piece of the creation and where we go from here. But it still doesn't address the fact that your tool, lots of tools, were based on models that were created based on a lot of human work. Doesn't that work deserve compensation? Or is it fair use to take every film ever made and use it to train an engine?
Yeah, so I guess there are different parts of that question. The first one is this idea of what the models are actually doing, right? And so the expectations is that you're going to make movies, then you're probably going to have a different set of assumptions of how the compensation models around the tools should work in the first place. And the realization is that, again, these are not making entire feature films. It's helping the below-the-line folks just move faster through a lot of that process. And part of it, when it comes to understanding how the models are trained, is I've used the analogy a few times, and I think it might resonate as well now here, where like training a model is not about taking scenes or data points and then replicating those data points in your outputs. It's about learning about the world. It's about learning about what is characteristic of a specific data set, and you're learning patterns. So it's like having sand on a beach. Like there's no one particular grain of salt that will define what the beach is. It's a collective amount of it that defines like how things are made, right?
But even accepting that, I want to push back on a couple of things in there. One, you still show some pretty specific grains of sand to make it out of, a lot of professional content, but also the idea that it's learning about the world, sure, but it's learning about the world in specific ways through actual human creations. What is the argument that they don't deserve some compensation and consent? Like to be able to say, yes, feel free, my grains of sand can help make a beautiful movie down the road, or saying, no, I don't want that.
Sure. So the different types of data. So there's a lot of, like, for example, synthetic data, where you're just generating the data. A lot of data is not human in the sense that my understanding is I've created something. So there's different parts of how you build the models themselves. So I'm not saying there's no answer to the compensation part. We've done partnership with like companies. We've announced some where like we tap into that, where like we can do something where there's a particular large amount of data that we can work with. Let's figure out how. But I think, again, it goes back to what are the models actually trying to do here? And if I get a lot of questions when I work with studios that people think that part of generating is kind of like taking specific scenes from different like movies and then collaging them together. And then so people want to have compensation for where those scenes were coming from. And there's no one scene where any of this is coming from. There's a music video we made for the film festival that it's a major artist that we're debuting tomorrow. And part of the conversation was like, all of it is generated. And part of it was like, what happens with the actors that are there? Like, what happens with the release forms? Well, there's no actors, it's all generated. So it kind of changes the nature of how you think about it in the first place by really setting up the expectation of what the models actually do. And so I think part of it is, I don't think there's one single answer, so we should compensate everyone or we should like work on this or that. I think it depends on how the models are trained, what data are fit into it, and every company has basically a different strategy.
So if I take your guys' API and Google's API and a bunch of other video APIs and use it to create my own API, you're fine with that because it's not any one specific API?
Yeah, these are general purpose tools. So these are tools that can be used in any way, shape, or form you want. And so, yeah, you can combine them in all sort of interesting ways. Yeah.
So you don't mind if I build a new video model based on Runway's model?
I mean, if you can, that would be great. We should hire you as a researcher.
So talk about how this is being used beyond individual filmmakers. You announced today a deal with AMC.
Correct.
Because again, one of the questions is where does this all lead? How does the world of professional video creation use these tools? What is AMC doing? Because it's not just on-screen stuff, but it is some on-screen stuff.
It is. There's different parts. There's, of course, marketing materials that can be augmented or help, and you help the folks working on those materials to just move faster. There's a lot of pre-production and post-production that goes and can leverage Runway. We have a lot of people using Runway for like early parts of the production cycle as well, and then, of course, for like post-production. So there are different parts. I wouldn't say there's one single thing. It's more about understanding how useful this technology is. And what we're seeing the most in studios and in Hollywood is, again, finding ways in your pipeline of making things where you can fit the systems And these systems can aid you at just moving at greater speeds, specifically with the level of complexity and demand that studios require.
So we only have a little time left, and I want to touch on the competitive landscape, because Runway's kind of known for its video creation. It's like built this niche, and yet when I think of your competitors, I think of Google and some other really big folks that have access to a ton of data, that have access to tons of servers. How do you make sure that you don't get stepped on? And I'm sure this has been a concern from day one.
So it is, but in a way, we started working on Runway when really it wasn't really a thing. Like I think that was the most striking thing about our vision, is that we control our destiny and we're the ones setting up the tone. And I think the interesting thing for me is right now we're at the stage where like video seems to be the most relevant thing you can do with Runway, but really we're not a video company. We don't see ourselves as a video company. We're building toward this idea of simulation systems. And what I mean by that is you're generating pixels or videos in a way that seems very similar to the way we've created video before. And that's why it's very appealing for filmmakings and ads and videos. But I don't think that's the goal overall of this technology. You're going to get to a point where you're going to be able to generate these pixels, these media types in real time. When that happens, that's a new media format.
So it's like 3D worlds, it's virtual worlds.
Exactly. It's virtual environments. It's generated completely on real time. And so for me, it's less about AI filmmaking. AI filmmaking is just the first stepping stone because it's the most obvious one. So the analogy, you were using the analogy, I think Jeffrey was speaking about it before, it's like digital to like analog. I think it's for me wider than that. It's like the camera as the starting point for filmmaking. That was a huge change in culture and society. And painters at the time were so afraid of the camera because they thought they were going to be out of a job, which kind of like feels very similar to what we're seeing right now. But the camera had to first be understood not as a replacement to painting, but as something completely different. And it happens to be that the camera, when it was first invented, most people saw it as a better version of painting. And so most of the early photographers were just like painters, like posing and doing the same kind of things that we knew about painting. Eventually, it evolved into a medium of its own, and now it's an art form of its own. So for me, we're in that like moment in time where we're thinking about AI in the way that we know about the world right now, which is films and games. Eventually, this is a new media format. This is a completely new set of experiences that will live together with everything we've known in the past. So filmmaking is not going to go away. We'll still have it in the same way that we still have painting while we have cinema.
All right. Well, I am going to have to leave it there. To be continued. Maybe next year we'll talk about virtual world building. Everyone, please give a hand for Chris. So you can stay. Okay. So I know now I'm literally standing between you and your espresso martini, so I'm going to make this quick. This concludes our second AI Summit New York. Huge thank you to our speakers, our partners, CSL, Thomas Preddy, you, our incredible audience, those of you on the live stream, many others, the team here at Altman, and a huge shout out to the Axios events team. I'm so privileged to work with them. They're the best team in the business, and literally without them, none of this would be possible. Don't forget to check out, we've got some AI CEOs in the back. I'm not sure exactly what they do. We hope to see you at our upcoming summits. We've got Washington, D.C. on September 17th and San Francisco on December 4th. And as this slide reminds you, if you enjoyed today, I can be in your inbox every day, Monday through Friday. All you have to do is either go to axios.com/newsletters, take a picture of that QR code. It's free. We talk about all the things you've heard about today. We talk about them each and every day. And now please join us downstairs for, right here. Please join us right here for our cocktail reception. Thanks again and have a great evening.
Thank you. That was great.
Thanks.